Self-discipline is not a personality trait. It's not something you're born with. It's not reserved for the rare few who have natural willpower. It's a skill. It's a decision. It's a process of training your mind, your actions, your habits, and your emotions to align with what you said you would do, regardless of how you feel. Self-discipline is the bridge between your goals and your reality, between your ambition and your results. It is the backbone of progress, the foundation of character, the tool that transforms vision into something tangible. You can have the clearest goals in the world, but if you cannot master discipline, those goals become nothing more than distant ideas. You'll start strong, but you won't sustain. You'll plan with intensity, but your follow-through will fall apart. And without follow-through, there's no momentum, no growth, no forward motion. Self-discipline is the difference between setting the standard and actually living it, between talking about your values and embodying them. This isn't about intensity. It's not about waking up at 4 a.m. and chasing perfection. It's about consistency, quiet, repeatable, focused action, especially on the days you don't feel like it, especially when no one's watching, especially when it's easier to negotiate, to postpone, to lower the bar. Self-discipline shows up when your feelings don't, when your mind offers excuses, but your standards stay firm. People think they need motivation to get things done, but motivation is temporary. It comes and goes. Discipline is what stays. It is what carries you forward when motivation fades. It is what allows you to take control of your day instead of letting your emotions or circumstances dictate it. Discipline doesn't ask, do I feel like it? It already decided. It moves. It finishes. It holds the line. If you want to build anything meaningful, health, wealth, purpose, peace, you have to stop outsourcing your consistency to your mood. You have to stop waiting to feel ready. You have to build habits that function without permission. Habits that are anchored to your identity, not your emotion. That's what discipline gives you, the power to create momentum, even when everything else is pushing against you. But discipline is not built overnight. It is a process, a craft, an art, something you shape over time by being intentional. You don't master discipline by trying to be perfect. You master it by practicing it, by creating a system around it, by conditioning your behavior to serve your goals instead of your impulses, by auditing your choices and being honest about where you let yourself off the hook. Discipline begins in the small things, the small decisions, the small acts of follow-through that no one sees. Because those are the ones that build your identity. Those are the ones that strengthen your self-trust. Every time you do what you said you would do, your identity catches up. Your belief in yourself gets stronger. And belief is what keeps you consistent. If you don't trust yourself, you'll always hesitate. You'll always wonder if you're capable. But when you keep promises to yourself, small ones, daily ones, that doubt begins to fade. And in its place, discipline builds something stronger, something rooted, something permanent. That's what we're going to build here. Over the course of this seminar, you're going to learn how to master the art of self-discipline. Not just once, but for life. Not by doing more, but by doing it differently. By learning how to create systems that serve you. By learning how to move past resistance. By learning how to lead yourself through pressure, through distraction, through exhaustion. By building a standard that's no longer up for debate. There are 5 core pillars to mastering this discipline. Each one sharpens your focus. Each one strengthens your behavior. Each one brings you closer to becoming the person who doesn't rely on motivation, who doesn't get thrown off by chaos, who doesn't keep resetting, but instead executes with clarity, with consistency, with quiet power. That's what discipline looks like when it's mastered. That's what we're building starting now. Mastering the art of self-discipline begins with understanding your relationship with time. Time is the one resource that cannot be recovered, cannot be recreated, and cannot be replaced. It is the most honest indicator of what matters to you. Not what you say matters, but what actually receives your attention, your energy, and your follow-through. People who are disciplined have a completely different relationship with time. They don't waste it. They don't gamble with it. They don't pretend they have more of it than they do. They use it as their greatest strategic advantage. If your schedule is reactive, your life will be reactive. If you let your day be dictated by notifications, distractions, and low-priority tasks, you will always feel busy, but never effective. That is the trap most people live in. They confuse motion with progress. They confuse urgency with importance. They spend their days doing things that don't move them forward, then wonder why they feel stuck. Discipline starts when you stop negotiating with your time, when you stop treating it like it's unlimited, when you stop acting like you can live a high-performance life with low-intensity habits. Time doesn't care about your intentions. It responds only to execution, to what you actually do, not what you planned, what you dreamed, or what you told yourself you'd get around to eventually. The most disciplined people plan their time like their future depends on it, because it does. They don't just set goals. They build calendars. They assign time to what matters. They don't just hope they'll feel ready. They create rituals that lock them in. Mornings that start on purpose. Routines that create rhythm. Anchors that keep them steady even when the day gets unpredictable. One of the biggest shifts in mastering self-discipline is moving from task-based thinking to block-based execution. Task-based thinking says, here's what I need to do. But block-based execution says, here's when I'm doing it. It turns theory into practice. It removes decision fatigue. It eliminates the option to delay. Because the moment something has a time assigned to it, it goes from idea to instruction. The reason most people don't follow through is not because they're weak. It's because they haven't structured their time to match their ambition. They haven't created boundaries. They haven't said no to the things that constantly distract them. And every distraction that gets in becomes a permission slip to drift, to delay, to put off the things that actually matter. Discipline is about saying no to urgency that isn't aligned, saying no to inputs that hijack your clarity, saying no to people who don't respect your schedule because they don't respect their own. Every no you say to the things that don't matter creates space for a deeper yes to what does. That's how you protect your time. That's how you protect your energy. It's not just about time management. It's about time ownership. When you stop blaming the day, the clock, or the chaos, you start leading your time like it's yours to command. And when you lead your time, you start leading your life. You stop waking up in reaction and start moving in rhythm. But this only works if your calendar reflects your character. It's not enough to write things down. You have to execute on them. And if your calendar is full of things that don't build you, don't grow you, don't align with your vision, then your life will reflect that clutter. Every minute you spend out of alignment becomes a cost, a tax, a weight on your potential. So you audit, you get honest. You look at your week and ask, Is this the life I want to live? Does this schedule reflect my values? Am I spending time on what I said matters most? If the answer is no, you don't wait to change everything. You change one thing, one block, one commitment, one habit that aligns you with who you want to be. Because self-discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about being aligned. It's about honoring your word through your time. It's about creating structure that reflects who you are, not who you used to be. And structure is what makes discipline sustainable. It removes the pressure to rely on motivation. It gives your life a rhythm that holds even when your energy doesn't. You don't master discipline by trying harder. You master it by thinking clearer. And when you start with time, everything else follows. Because how you spend your time is how you spend your life. And if you want your life to reflect your highest potential, your calendar needs to look like it. Mastering the art of self-discipline requires redefining how you deal with resistance. Resistance is not the enemy. It's the invitation. It's the friction between who you are and who you're becoming. It's the tension that shows up every time you try to grow. Every time you try to break an old habit, create a new standard, or stretch into a higher version of yourself, resistance will try to meet you there. And if you treat resistance like a sign to stop, you'll never break through. You need to understand that resistance isn't personal. It's mechanical. It's what your brain does to keep you safe, familiar, comfortable. It's a defense mechanism built to protect your survival, not your expansion. But if you don't learn how to override it, you'll confuse protection for purpose. You'll convince yourself you're being wise, when really, you're just being safe. The people who are the most disciplined don't wait for resistance to disappear. They've simply learned to move through it. They've trained themselves to expect it, to meet it without panic, to recognize it as part of the process. And in doing that, they've separated their behavior from their feelings. They no longer wait to feel right, to do what's right. This is where self-leadership really begins. When you can feel resistance fully and still take action. When you can notice the voice that says, you're not ready, and say, that doesn't matter. I'm still going. When you can wake up tired and still execute. When you can face doubt and still move forward. That's discipline. Not the absence of resistance, but the presence of resolve. You build that resolve through repetition, by showing up anyway, by building a track record of action despite resistance. And over time, that resistance begins to weaken. It doesn't disappear, but it no longer leads. It no longer owns your decisions. It no longer dictates your standard. Resistance shows up strongest right before you level up. It intensifies when you're close to breaking an old identity, when you're getting too consistent, when you're getting too focused. That's when your mind will try to pull you back, because familiarity is safe and progress threatens that safety. So if you've been feeling more resistance lately, it doesn't mean you're off course. It probably means you're on track. That's why discipline isn't built on ease. It's built on awareness. Awareness of how your patterns try to protect you. Awareness of how your mind reacts to discomfort. Awareness of when you're operating from vision versus when you're operating from fear. That awareness is what gives you leverage. And with leverage, you can choose differently. One of the most powerful ways to train discipline through resistance is to make your actions small but non-negotiable. When the pressure is high, the habit doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to be done. 10 minutes of writing, 5 minutes of journaling, a walk around the block. Whatever aligns with your identity, do it. Not because you feel like it, because it keeps the standard alive. Discipline dies in negotiation. It dies when you start asking if you really need to today. So you remove the conversation. You act first. You feel later. You train the muscle of movement. And the more you train it, the stronger it gets. Until resistance stops being a red flag and becomes a green light. You train this by deliberately doing hard things on purpose, not to suffer, but to strengthen. You challenge yourself in controlled environments. You push your limits daily, not just when life forces you to. Because if you only grow when you're forced to, you're always playing defense. But when you choose challenge before it chooses you, you start leading your own evolution. This doesn't mean every day is a war, but every day should contain some friction, some stretch, some challenge that reinforces that you are in charge, not your comfort, not your fear, not your fatigue. You are. And that reinforcement, that's how you master resistance, not by avoiding it, by proving day after day that it doesn't get to win. Mastering the art of self-discipline requires you to eliminate the emotional dependency on motivation. Motivation is emotional fuel, but it's unstable. It rises and falls with your mood. It comes and goes based on how exciting the thing feels or how smooth your day starts. If your behavior is dependent on being motivated, then your consistency will always be fragile. Discipline, on the other hand, isn't based on emotion. It's based on identity and execution. The problem isn't that motivation is bad. It's that it's unpredictable. It's easy to act when you feel inspired. Anyone can be consistent when it's convenient. But lasting discipline is revealed on the days you don't feel like it. When there's no energy. When the work feels dry. When the emotion that fueled your last breakthrough is nowhere to be found. That's where discipline either holds or collapses. Discipline is about leading yourself without needing to feel like a leader in the moment. It's about showing up like it matters, even when your mood says it doesn't. And that mindset isn't built by chasing motivation. It's built by training consistency, by focusing less on how you feel and more on what you committed to. The question you need to ask yourself isn't, do I feel ready? It's, what did I say I would do? Discipline lives in that gap between intention and behavior. It doesn't ask for your permission. It asks for your execution. That's how you take ownership of your progress. Not through inspiration, but through commitment. When you stop relying on motivation, you begin to design systems that keep you moving even when the internal spark fades. You build routines. You create triggers that start your day. You assign specific time blocks for specific actions. You create accountability. And most importantly, you build a culture within yourself where follow-through is expected, not negotiated. People who don't master this end up living in waves. Intense push, followed by deep stall. All in for a few days, then missing for weeks. Their life becomes a loop of restarts and remotivation. They keep looking for new plans, new hacks, new sources of energy. But the problem isn't the plan. It's the lack of discipline to follow through on the basics. If you want to change that loop, you have to change your questions. You stop asking, how do I stay motivated? And you start asking, how do I stay consistent? You stop looking for excitement and start looking for structure. You stop trying to hype yourself up and start building patterns that work when the excitement disappears. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a boost of motivation, but it cannot be your foundation. Your foundation has to be something stronger, something steadier. That foundation is identity, the version of you who does the work regardless of the emotional weather. the version of you who doesn't stop just because it's not exciting. You reinforce that identity with repetition, with small daily wins, with doing what you said you would do even when it's invisible, even when it's inconvenient. And every time you follow through, your belief grows, not because you feel better, but because you've proven something to yourself. And belief built from behavior is belief that holds. You build that foundation by designing your life to support it. You stop leaving things to chance. You create friction between you and your distractions. You reduce the number of decisions you have to make. You make the path to discipline smooth and the path to distraction hard. That's strategy. That's architecture. That's leadership. When your discipline is rooted in systems and identity, you no longer collapse every time your motivation dips. You have something to fall back on. You've trained your brain that follow-through doesn't require a mood. It just requires alignment with your standard, with your schedule, with your values. This is how you break the loop of inconsistency. You stop treating your emotions like authority. You stop letting excitement determine execution. You stop waiting for motivation to find you, and you build a life that moves even when it doesn't show up. That's where freedom begins. That's where real growth happens. Mastering the art of self-discipline means learning how to lead yourself through discomfort. Most people run from discomfort, negotiate with it, try to soften it or delay it. But the people who build something that lasts, who become unshakable in their behavior, train themselves to move through discomfort like it's part of the process, not a problem to be solved. Discomfort is not a sign you're off track. It's often a signal that you're stretching, that you're in unfamiliar territory, that you're doing something that challenges the version of you that used to run things. And when you begin to shift your perspective, you'll see that discomfort is not something to avoid. It's something to leverage. You build that leverage by being intentional, by stepping into friction on purpose. Every time you do something hard that aligns with your goals, you reinforce the identity of someone who finishes what they start. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be done. 5 more reps when your body says stop. 10 more minutes of focus when your mind starts drifting. Making the phone call you've been putting off. Every one of those reps builds mental muscle. Discipline is not a switch you flip. It's a muscle you train. And the weight you lift is discomfort. When you avoid that weight, the muscle weakens. But when you show up again and again and again, even when you don't feel like it, your capacity grows. Not just to act, but to hold pressure, to endure, to keep leading yourself forward when everything inside you says, let's stop. This kind of strength gives you a new level of freedom, because now you're no longer a prisoner of convenience. You don't fold every time things get hard. You don't change your mind every time you feel friction. You keep going, not because it's easy, but because you've trained your mind to expect discomfort and lead anyway. But to live this way, you have to stop trying to make everything comfortable. Comfort is not the goal. Alignment is. Discipline doesn't promise comfort. It promises results. And those results come after long stretches of boredom resistance, repetition, and stretch. That's what the world doesn't tell you. But that's where the truth lives. Most people fall short not because they're lazy, but because they believe the lie that things should feel easier. That resistance means something's wrong. That if they don't feel like it, it must not be the right time. But people who win know better. They feel the resistance and they move anyway. They see the discomfort and they interpret it as a signal to keep going, not to stop. This is why exposure to discomfort is so important. You have to deliberately do things that stretch you, not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself who's in charge. Cold showers, fasting, long runs, deep focus, anything that takes your comfort away and forces you to act anyway. That's not just a challenge, it's leadership training. Because when you've trained your body and mind to keep going without needing to feel good, you become a different kind of person. Someone who is trusted, someone who is steady, someone who doesn't need ideal conditions to produce world-class results. That's what leaders are built from. Not talent, not intensity, but consistent exposure to discomfort. But it's not enough to experience discomfort. You have to respond to it correctly. Discomfort should not lead to shutdown. It should lead to reset, to breathe, to refocus. You don't pretend it's not there. You acknowledge it, but you choose alignment over comfort. You say, yes, this is hard, and I'm still going to do it. That's power. That's discipline. You learn to set internal cues. When you feel the urge to quit, you anchor into your breath. When you want to pause, you do one more. When you feel pulled off track, you remind yourself what's at stake, and you move. Not perfectly, but forward. Always forward. This is how the gap closes. The gap between who you are and who you want to be. The only thing standing between those two versions is your ability to hold the line when it's hard, to keep going when the pressure is on, to keep choosing the standard when comfort offers you an easy exit. You decline the exit. You honor the standard. Mastering the art of self-discipline reaches its highest level when you learn how to lead yourself without needing an audience. Most people are consistent when someone is watching, when they're being held accountable, when their effort is visible. But true discipline isn't loud. It's not performative. It's private. It shows up when the cameras are off, when no one is checking, when no one will ever know if you cut corners. The reason most people struggle with discipline is because their fuel source is external. They need pressure. They need recognition. They need accountability from the outside. But as long as your consistency depends on visibility, you'll always be vulnerable to inconsistency. The moment people stop watching, you stop moving. The moment the applause fades, your pace drops. That's not discipline. That's dependency. If you want your behavior to hold long term, it has to be rooted in something deeper. You have to build an internal scorecard, a standard you don't compromise, a quiet contract you make with yourself that says, I do the work, not for attention, not for approval, but because I said I would. That's the highest level of self-leadership. You become someone who doesn't need reminders, who doesn't need praise, who doesn't rely on being seen. Because you see yourself, you track your own habits, you hold your own line. And when you start living that way, something shifts. You start feeling different. Not louder, but steadier. Not busier, but sharper. You're no longer trying to prove. You're simply walking in your truth. The foundation of lasting discipline is self-respect. Every time you follow through on a private commitment, you build trust. And every time you skip it because no one is watching, that trust erodes. You don't lose it all at once. You lose it slowly, subtly, a few compromises at a time, until eventually your word doesn't mean anything, not to others, but to you. That erosion is what leads to doubt. Not because you're incapable, but because you stopped being consistent with yourself. And the only way to rebuild that belief is to start showing up when no one's clapping, when it doesn't feel urgent, when it doesn't feel glamorous. You show up anyway. You do the work anyway. That's the version of you that becomes unshakable. The one who leads from standard, not spotlight. The one who builds quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And when people finally notice, you're already 10 miles down the road. Because you didn't wait to be seen. You were too busy becoming. This approach doesn't mean you isolate. It means you lead. You can still have community, still have mentors, still have support, but your behavior isn't tied to it. It's supported by it, not fueled by it. You don't collapse when the support fades because your habits don't depend on it. That's maturity. That's freedom. You don't build that level of self-discipline overnight. You build it through quiet reps, through honoring commitments that no one knows about, through training your nervous system to follow the plan, even when the payoff is months away. Through remembering that the goal is not to impress, it's to improve. You develop self-accountability rituals, end-of-day check-ins, weekly reflections, a scoreboard you actually care about, not one built on likes or praise, but one rooted in questions like, did I follow through today? Did I honor my process? Did I move with purpose? Did I keep the promise? And when the answer is yes, even if no one else saw it, you sleep different. You carry yourself differently because you're not borrowing confidence. You're building it from within, from consistency, from integrity. And that kind of discipline, it doesn't fade. It gets stronger the longer you live it. You've now walked through every layer of what it means to master the art of self-discipline. Not the surface level version, not the cliche version, the real thing, the structure, the identity, the habits, the system, the mindset. You've studied the tools that build it, the traps that break it, and the patterns that shape it. Now the only thing left to do is live it. You've seen that discipline is not based on how you feel. It's built through alignment with your values, your structure, and your schedule. It's not about waking up inspired every day. It's about waking up committed. You know now that the people who stay consistent don't wait for motivation. They live through system. You've studied how to respond to resistance, not to avoid it, not to fear it, but to recognize it as a sign of growth, to feel it fully and act anyway. You now know that real discipline isn't the absence of struggle. It's the refusal to surrender to it. You hold the line not because it's easy, but because it's who you are. You've dismantled the myth that you need to feel ready. You've learned to move first, to act before doubt wins, to take the next step, not when it's convenient, but when it's required. You've shortened the distance between knowing and doing. That's the mark of a person who leads themselves well. You've understood that discomfort isn't a red flag. It's a sign you're in motion. That challenge is the training ground for capacity. That every time you do what's hard on purpose, you reinforce a powerful truth. You don't need comfort to be consistent. You don't need ideal conditions to be excellent. You've reinforced the power of acting without an audience, the strength of private consistency, the identity of someone who doesn't require applause to finish what they start, the kind of person who keeps their own score, who leads from principle, who keeps their word even when no one's watching. That's a level of discipline most people never reach. But now you're living it. And what you've built here doesn't end today. This is not the kind of discipline that disappears in a week, because it's no longer about force. It's about rhythm. It's about clarity. It's about showing up for your future like it's already real, because it is, and every repetition brings it closer. There will still be hard days. There will still be pressure. There will still be moments when your mind tries to pull you off track. But now, you don't flinch. You don't fall back. You don't restart the cycle of someday, because you know what to do. And more importantly, you know who you are. You are someone who holds the standard, who keeps the promise, who leads with clarity, who finishes the day aligned. That's not hype. That's not performance. That's discipline. And when you live this way long enough, your life starts to reflect it. Not just in what you accomplish, but in who you become. Discipline is the foundation upon which success is built. It's the daily decisions, the small, consistent actions, and the relentless commitment to a goal that shapes our futures. While talent and opportunity play their roles, without discipline, even the most promising paths can lead nowhere. So, how do we cultivate this essential quality? Discipline isn't just about willpower. It's about developing the habits, systems, and mindset that allow you to stay on track, even when motivation fades. First, discipline begins with self-awareness. You can't change what you don't understand. Many people go through life unaware of their habits and routines. They react to circumstances, living day to day without a clear sense of where their time, energy, and focus are going. But discipline requires you to take control, to consciously direct your actions toward your goals. The first step to building discipline is becoming aware of how you spend your time and identifying where you may be falling short. Start by taking inventory of your daily habits. Write down everything you do for a week. Be honest and thorough. Include everything from the time you wake up to when you go to bed. This process is not about judgment, but about gaining clarity. Once you've mapped out your week, you'll likely notice patterns, areas where time is wasted, tasks that aren't moving you closer to your goals, and opportunities for improvement. Awareness is powerful because it gives you a starting point. You might realize you're spending hours each day on distractions like mindless entertainment. These moments may seem insignificant in isolation, but over the course of a week or month, they add up to a significant portion of time that could be better spent on activities that align with your goals. Recognizing these habits is the first step towards shifting them. Self-awareness allows you to see clearly where you're disciplined and where you're not, so you can begin making intentional changes. Next, start small. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to become more disciplined is attempting to overhaul their entire lives overnight. They set ambitious goals, try to change too much at once, and inevitably burn out. Discipline is not about radical change. It's about steady, incremental improvement. Think of discipline like a muscle. You wouldn't go into the gym for the first time and try to lift 300 pounds. You'd start with a weight that's challenging but manageable and gradually increase it over time. The same principle applies to discipline. If you're trying to build the habit of waking up early, don't start by setting your alarm 2 hours earlier than usual. Instead, wake up just 10 or 15 minutes earlier each day until you gradually adjust to the new routine. The key is to make the change small enough that it's sustainable, but consistent enough that it moves you forward. Over time, these small actions compound. Just as a small snowball rolling down a hill picks up speed and size, so too do the small disciplined actions you take each day. The cumulative effect of these small steps can lead to massive results over time. And as you build momentum, you'll find it easier to stay disciplined because your habits will start to reinforce themselves. Now, here's the challenge most people face. They rely on motivation. They wait for the moment when they feel like it. But here's the truth. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes. If you rely on motivation alone, your discipline will waver. The real key to building discipline is to take action even when you don't feel like it. This is where those small steps are so important. When the task seems too big or overwhelming, break it down into something so small that you can do it no matter how you feel. If you're trying to build the habit of exercising regularly, but you're not feeling motivated, commit to doing just 5 minutes of exercise. 5 minutes seems easy enough, right? But once you start, you'll often find that you keep going. The hardest part is getting started. And if you truly only do 5 minutes, that's still a win. You're building the habit, strengthening your discipline muscle. Next, delay gratification. We live in a world that's obsessed with instant results. Everywhere you look, there's a promise of something quick and easy. Get rich quick schemes, lose weight fast diets, shortcuts to success. But here's the truth. Anything worth achieving takes time and effort. Discipline is the ability to forego short-term pleasure for long-term gain. Delayed gratification is about resisting the temptation to take the easy path in favor of the harder, more rewarding one. It's about choosing to stay in and work on your side business instead of going out with friends. It's about investing your money rather than spending it on things you don't need. It's about saying no to the immediate desire in favor of the bigger reward that comes from sticking to your long-term goals. In the 1970s, they conducted what became known as the marshmallow experiment. Children were given a choice. They could eat 1 marshmallow immediately or wait 15 minutes and receive 2 marshmallows. The researchers then followed these children for years and found that those who were able to delay gratification and wait for the second marshmallow were more successful in life. They had better health, higher test scores, and more successful careers. The lesson here is clear. Success doesn't come from immediate satisfaction. It comes from the ability to delay gratification and stay disciplined in the pursuit of your goals. When you choose the harder path, the path that requires patience, effort, and consistency, you're investing in your future self. Every time you delay gratification, you strengthen your discipline and increase your chances of long-term success. But delayed gratification isn't just about saying no to immediate pleasure. It's also about prioritizing what matters most. Discipline isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things. Often we get caught up in busy work or tasks that don't actually move us closer to our goals. Discipline is about focus. It's about identifying the few key actions that will make the biggest difference in your life and committing to doing those things consistently. Think of it this way. If you try to chase 2 rabbits at the same time, you'll catch neither. The same is true in life. If you're trying to pursue too many goals at once, you'll spread your focus too thin, and you won't make meaningful progress on any of them. To build discipline, you need to get clear on your priorities. What are the few things that truly matter? What are the actions that will have the greatest impact on your success? Once you've identified your priorities, it's time to say no to everything else. This is where many people struggle. They want to do it all, but discipline requires you to make tough choices. You've got to eliminate the distractions, the unnecessary tasks, and the activities that don't align with your goals. This isn't easy, but it's necessary. The more focused you are, the more disciplined you'll become because your energy will be directed toward the things that truly matter. Next, you need to build a routine. Routines are the backbone of discipline. They take the guesswork out of your day and reduce the number of decisions you have to make. The fewer decisions you have to make, the less mental energy you use, and the easier it is to stay disciplined. Successful people aren't more disciplined because they have superhuman willpower. They're more disciplined because they've created systems and routines that make it easier to stay on track. Many successful people have a morning routine that sets the tone for their day. Whether it's exercising, journaling, or planning their day, these routines create structure and help them stay focused on their goals. Routines are powerful because they remove the need for constant decision-making. When you follow a routine, you don't have to think about what to do next. It's already planned. This reduces decision fatigue, which is the mental exhaustion that comes from making too many choices. By creating a routine, you free up your mental energy to focus on the things that matter most. So, how do you build a routine? Start by identifying the most important tasks you need to accomplish each day. These should be the tasks that have the greatest impact on your success. Once you've identified these tasks, schedule them into your day at the same time every day. Over time, these tasks will become habits, and discipline will no longer feel like a struggle. It will become automatic. The beauty of routines is that they create consistency. And consistency is the hallmark of discipline. It's not about being perfect every day. It's about showing up day in and day out, regardless of how you feel. When you create a routine that supports your goals, you eliminate the need for motivation or willpower. You simply follow the plan, and over time, the results will follow. As you build your routine, remember to be flexible. Life will inevitably throw challenges your way, and there will be days when things don't go as planned. The key is to get back on track as quickly as possible. Don't let one bad day turn into a bad week or a bad month. Discipline is about resilience. It's about bouncing back after setbacks and staying committed to your long-term goals. Building discipline is a lifelong journey. It's not something you achieve once and then forget about. It requires constant effort, self-reflection, and adjustment. But the rewards are worth it. When you master discipline, you gain control over your life. You become the architect of your future rather than a victim of circumstances. Discipline gives you the power to shape your destiny, to achieve your dreams, and to become the person you've always wanted to be. And it all starts with small daily actions. By becoming self-aware, starting small, delaying gratification, focusing on your priorities, and creating routines, you can build the discipline that will lead to lasting success. One of the most important lessons about discipline is that it's a skill that must be nurtured over time. Just like with any skill, the more you practice, the better you get at it. It's easy to be disciplined when everything is going smoothly, when you're in control, when you feel good, and when there are no distractions. But real discipline is tested when things get tough. When challenges arise, when you're tired, when setbacks occur, this is where the true strength of your discipline is revealed. I've often found that people tend to give up too soon. They hit a bump in the road, experience a bit of discomfort, and they abandon their plan. But I'm telling you, the road to success is not a straight line. There will be obstacles, distractions, and days when you feel like giving up. It's during these moments that you must dig deep and stay consistent. This is where discipline becomes your greatest ally. There's an old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I believe that. Discipline is about pushing through, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about doing what needs to be done, not because you feel like it, but because it's necessary. This is what separates those who achieve their goals from those who don't. The disciplined person keeps going, no matter what. Now, here's something to remember. Discipline is built in the mundane. The day-to-day seemingly insignificant actions you take are what shape your future. Many people think discipline is about grand gestures or big moments of willpower. But that's not where discipline lives. Discipline is built in the little things. The decisions you make when no one is watching. The small sacrifices you make every day. And the commitment to doing the work even when it's boring or tedious. Here's where a lot of people get stuck. They lose patience. In our fast-paced world, everyone wants results right now. But discipline teaches us that true success takes time. It requires patience, persistence, and a long-term perspective. You have to be willing to put in the work today, knowing that the rewards may not come immediately. But rest assured, if you stay disciplined, the results will come. You must trust the process. Discipline is about having faith in the work you're putting in, even when you don't see immediate results. Sometimes you'll feel like your efforts are in vain, like you're spinning your wheels and not making progress. But trust me, every small disciplined action you take is building towards something greater. It may not be visible yet, but it's happening. Think about it like planting a tree. When you plant a seed, you don't see results right away. You water it, care for it, and wait. For a while, it seems like nothing is happening. But under the surface, roots are growing, and eventually, the tree begins to sprout. That's how discipline works. You have to trust that your efforts are laying the foundation, even when you can't see the progress. And one day, seemingly out of nowhere, the results will start to appear. And you've got to watch who you surround yourself with. Your environment plays a huge role in your ability to stay disciplined. If you're surrounded by people who don't share your goals or who aren't disciplined themselves, it's going to be much harder for you to stay on track. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who are focused, disciplined, and striving for success, you'll find it much easier to maintain your own discipline. Discipline is contagious. When you're around others who are pushing themselves, who are committed to their goals, it inspires you to do the same. Their energy, their habits, and their focus rub off on you. This is why it's so important to be intentional about the people you spend time with. If you want to be more disciplined, seek out those who are already living that way. Find mentors, friends, or colleagues who are disciplined in their own lives, and let their example guide you. I've always said then that we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So ask yourself, who are you surrounding yourself with? Are they lifting you up, helping you stay disciplined, and encouraging you to reach your potential? Or are they pulling you down, distracting you, and leading you away from your goals? Be honest with yourself. If you want to build discipline, you need to be around people who will support that growth. Now, in addition to surrounding yourself with the right people, it's crucial to create an environment that fosters discipline. What do I mean by this? Well, think about your physical environment. Is it set up in a way that supports your goals, or is it full of distractions and temptations? If you're trying to eat healthier, but your kitchen is full of junk food, it's going to be a lot harder to stay disciplined. If you're trying to be more productive, but your workspace is cluttered and disorganized, your focus will suffer. One of the simplest ways to build discipline is by eliminating distractions and setting up your environment for success. This could mean cleaning up your workspace, putting your phone away during focused work time, or removing temptations that lead to procrastination. The goal is to create an environment where the disciplined choice is the easy choice. This idea also applies to your mental environment. Are you filling your mind with positive, inspiring content that motivates you to stay disciplined? Or are you consuming negativity, distractions, and information that doesn't serve your goals? Just as you should be intentional about the people you surround yourself with, you should also be intentional about the information you allow into your mind. Here's the truth. Discipline requires clarity. You need to be crystal clear about what you want to achieve and why it's important to you. Without this clarity, discipline will always be a struggle. When you have a strong enough why, discipline becomes easier because you're no longer relying on sheer willpower. You're driven by a deeper purpose. Think about your goals. Why do you want to achieve them? What's the bigger picture? It's not enough to say, I want to be successful, or I want to be healthier. You need to dig deeper. Why do you want to be successful? What will success allow you to do? How will it change your life? The clearer you are about your why, the stronger your discipline will be. Clarity provides direction. It gives you something to focus on when things get tough. When you're tired, when you're tempted to give up, or when distractions come your way, your clarity of purpose will keep you grounded. It reminds you why you started in the first place and what's at stake if you don't stay disciplined. This clarity is your anchor. One of the ways to maintain clarity is by setting clear, specific goals. Discipline thrives on direction, and your goals provide that direction. The more specific your goals are, the easier it will be to stay disciplined. Instead of saying, I want to get in shape, set a goal like, I want to run a 10K in 3 months. Instead of saying, I want to be more productive, set a goal like, I will write 500 words every day for the next 30 days. Specific goals give you something concrete to work toward. They create a roadmap for your discipline. When you know exactly what you're aiming for, it's easier to make the disciplined choices that will move you closer to that goal. You're not just working in the abstract, you're working with purpose. As you work toward your goals, it's also important to celebrate your progress along the way. Discipline doesn't mean you have to be rigid or harsh with yourself. In fact, one of the best ways to stay disciplined is by acknowledging and celebrating the small victories. Every time you make a disciplined choice, you're reinforcing the habit of discipline. And every time you reinforce that habit, you're moving closer to your goal. So don't wait until you've achieved the big goal to celebrate. Take time to acknowledge the small wins along the way. Did you wake up early today and stick to your routine? Celebrate that. Did you resist a temptation that would have derailed your progress? Celebrate that. These small celebrations keep you motivated and remind you that discipline is paying off, even if the results aren't immediately visible. Ultimately, discipline is about creating a life of purpose and intention. It's about taking control of your actions and decisions rather than letting life happen to you. When you build discipline, you gain the power to shape your future. You become the author of your own story. And while the journey may not always be easy, the rewards are immense. Discipline allows you to achieve your goals, create lasting change, and become the person you've always wanted to be. It's not something that happens overnight, but with time, effort, and consistency, it can become one of the most powerful tools in your life. Next, hold yourself accountable. Accountability is one of the most powerful tools for staying on track because it forces you to own your decisions and actions. When you make a commitment to yourself and others, it increases the pressure to follow through. It's easy to let yourself off the hook when no one else knows about your goals or your commitments. But when someone else is involved, the stakes become higher. Accountability can take many forms. It could be as simple as telling a friend or family member about your goals and asking them to check in on your progress. Or it could be joining a group of like-minded people who are also working toward their own goals. The key here is to create a system where you are regularly reporting your progress to someone else. Early in my career, when I was trying to build better financial habits, I set a goal to save a specific percentage of my income each month. I knew that if I didn't have someone holding me accountable, I might be tempted to slack off, spend a little extra here or there, and convince myself that I would make up for it later. So I partnered with a colleague who was also trying to improve his financial discipline. And we agreed to check in with each other at the end of every month. Knowing that I had to report my progress to someone else kept me on track, and it became much easier to stay disciplined with my spending and savings goals. Here's the thing. Accountability doesn't just apply to financial goals. It works for everything. Whether you're trying to get in shape, build a business, or develop a new skill. When you share your goals with others and invite them to hold you accountable, you're creating a structure that supports discipline. You're adding an external layer of motivation, which can be especially helpful when your internal motivation is running low. But accountability isn't just about involving others. It's also about being accountable to yourself. You've got to become your own best coach. That means setting clear expectations for yourself and following through, even when no one else is watching. It's easy to let yourself off the hook with excuses like, I'll do it tomorrow, or it doesn't really matter. But discipline requires you to hold yourself to a higher standard. You have to be honest with yourself about your progress, your efforts, and your setbacks. One of the best ways to stay accountable to yourself is to track your progress. When you write down what you've done each day, you create a record of your discipline. And when you see that record grow over time, it builds momentum. You start to feel proud of the progress you've made. And that feeling reinforces the habit of discipline. Next, manage your emotions. A lot of people think that discipline is purely about action, about doing the work, sticking to the routine, and making the right choices. And that's true, but there's another layer to it. Discipline also requires emotional management. Because, let's face it, our emotions can often get in the way of our best intentions. Think about it. How many times have you set a goal, gotten off to a strong start, and then suddenly hit a wall because you didn't feel like continuing? Maybe you got frustrated, discouraged, or bored. Or maybe life threw an unexpected challenge your way, and you felt overwhelmed. These emotional roadblocks are a natural part of the process, and everyone faces them. But the key to discipline is learning how to manage those emotions so that they don't derail your progress. Let me be clear. Discipline doesn't mean ignoring your emotions or pretending that you don't feel frustrated or tired or stressed. That's not realistic. What it does mean is learning how to keep your emotions in check so that they don't control your actions. This requires a level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. You've got to be able to recognize when you're feeling discouraged or overwhelmed and have strategies in place to deal with those emotions in a productive way. One strategy that works well is reframing your mindset. When you hit a tough spot and your emotions start to take over, it's easy to focus on the negative, on how hard it is, how tired you are, or how far you still have to go. But if you can reframe your thoughts and focus on the positive aspects of the situation, it becomes easier to push through. Instead of thinking, this is too hard, or I'll never make it, try shifting your mindset to something like, this is a challenge, but I'm getting stronger because of it. Or, every step I take brings me closer to my goal. It's amazing how much power our thoughts have over our emotions. When you change the way you think about a situation, you change the way you feel about it. And when you change the way you feel, it becomes easier to stay disciplined. Another powerful way to manage your emotions is to be grateful for what you have. When you're in the thick of a challenge, it's easy to focus on everything that's going wrong. But being grateful shifts your focus to what's going right. It reminds you of the progress you've made, the opportunities you have, and the lessons you're learning along the way. Being grateful helps you stay positive even when things get tough, and that positivity fuels your discipline. So, at the end of each day, take a few minutes to write down 3 things you're grateful for. These can be big things like hitting a major milestone, or small things like having the energy to complete your daily tasks. The point is to train your mind to focus on the positives. Over time, this will help you manage your emotions more effectively, and in turn, it will strengthen your discipline. Next, you must embrace failure as part of the process. Too often, people think that discipline is about being perfect, about never slipping up, never missing a workout, never giving in to temptation. But the truth is, discipline isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about getting back on track after a setback and continuing to move forward, even when you've made mistakes. Failure is a natural part of the journey. No one is disciplined 100% of the time. We all have moments where we fall short, where we give in to distractions, or where we just don't follow through. The key is not to let those moments derail you completely. When you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up. Don't throw in the towel. Instead, use it as a learning opportunity. Ask yourself, what went wrong? Why did I slip up? And how can I prevent this from happening again? This mindset shift is critical because it takes the fear out of failure. When you see failure as part of the process, it becomes less intimidating. You no longer feel like you have to be perfect to succeed. You understand that every mistake is just a stepping stone on the path to success. And the more you embrace failure, the more resilient you become. I've seen so many people give up on their goals after a single setback. They miss one day of their routine, and suddenly they convince themselves that they've failed. But here's the truth. Missing one day doesn't define your success. It's what you do the next day that matters. Discipline is about consistency over time, not about being flawless. If you stumble, get back up and keep going. The most disciplined people are not the ones who never fail. They're the ones who refuse to quit. So, How do you embrace failure as part of the process? Start by shifting your mindset. Instead of seeing failure as something to be feared, see it as something to be learned from. Each failure is an opportunity to grow, to improve, and to become more disciplined. And when you view failure this way, it loses its power over you. You stop fearing it, and you start using it to fuel your progress. Now take a moment to think about the ways in which failure has played a role in your own journey. Maybe there were times when you set a goal, but you didn't follow through. Maybe you tried to build a new habit, but it didn't stick. Instead of seeing these moments as defeats, reframe them as valuable learning experiences. Ask yourself what you can learn from them and how you can apply those lessons moving forward. In the end, discipline is about the long game. It's not about achieving short-term perfection. It's about developing the habits, mindset, and resilience that allow you to stay on track over the long haul. Every small, disciplined action you take brings you closer to your goals, even when the progress isn't immediately visible. And every time you pick yourself up after a setback, you're building the kind of discipline that will carry you through the toughest challenges. So these are the keys to building lasting discipline. And with each passing day, as you practice these principles, you'll find that discipline becomes not just something you do, but something you are. It will become a part of your character, shaping every decision you make and every goal you pursue. And he asked me, Mr. Rohn, what's the secret? What's the big secret to success? And I told him that it's not one big secret. It's a handful of small disciplines practiced every day. That's the truth. Because discipline weighs ounces. Regret, that weighs tons. And most people spend a lifetime figuring out the difference. See, discipline is when you set the alarm clock, and when it rings at 6, you get up. Regret is when you let it ring, turn it off, and roll back over. Discipline is when you eat an apple instead of the candy bar. Regret is when you walk into the doctor's office and he tells you your health is gone. Discipline is paying your bills on time. Regret is when the creditor comes knocking. Ounces versus tons. Small versus heavy. Easy versus costly. Now here's the strange thing. Discipline seems hard in the moment, but it's light when you carry it. You lift it up, you take care of it, and it's gone. You feel lighter. But regret doesn't come until later. And when it comes, it lands with a thud. You don't shake it off in a day. It lingers. It weighs on your conscience. It weighs on your reputation. It weighs on your opportunities. That's why I call it tons. Mr. Schoaf always told me, pay now, play later, or play now, pay later. But either way, you're going to pay. And I thought, what a way to put it. Life always sends the bill. The only question is, will it cost you ounces or will it cost you tons? Here, let me paint a little picture. Imagine 2 piles. On this side, you've got a small stack of weights. An ounce here, an ounce there. That's discipline. You can carry that. You can pick it up each morning, put it in your pocket, and move on with your day. Over here, though, is a mountain, and you can't even budge it. That's regret. And one day, if you're not careful, you'll wake up and realize you traded those little ounces you could have carried for the mountain you can't move. I'll tell you why this struck me so hard. I grew up in Idaho. I was a farm boy. My father was a good man, hardworking, honest, but he never caught on to this idea of discipline in the right way. He worked hard physically, but he didn't develop financially. He didn't learn about saving, investing, planning. And when he was old, he had health problems and no money. That's regret. And I said to myself as a young man, I don't want to carry that weight. I'd rather take the ounces. Now here's the good news. You don't have to carry yesterday's regrets into tomorrow. You can set them down and start picking up the ounces. Maybe you've let yourself slide a little. Maybe you've put off the reading, the planning, the exercise, the saving. Fine. Don't let it pile up. Start now. Pick up 1 ounce today. Do one disciplined thing today. Because those ounces added up over the years turn into wealth, health, vitality, reputation, and happiness. So I tell people, don't get tricked by the weight. Don't think discipline is too heavy. Don't think it's too much to ask. What's heavy is the hospital bill. What's heavy is the bankruptcy. What's heavy is the lost friendship, the missed opportunity, the wasted talent. Those are the tons. The ounces are the push-ups. The ounces are the early morning hour with the book. The ounces are the few dollars you set aside. That's light. That's easy. That's the price of a better future. And if you'll take it from me, from the farm boy from Idaho who had to learn this the hard way, discipline is the magic bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And the bridge is built ounce by ounce. One of the greatest discoveries of my life was this: success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by the person you become. That was a revelation to me. And the way you become that person is through discipline. The ounces. Now, when I was 25 years old, I was broke. I was embarrassed. I had a family, and I couldn't pay my bills. Somebody said, "How could a guy work hard all day and still be broke?" Easy. You work hard on your job, but you don't work hard on yourself. That was me. I had a job, I had activity, but I wasn't growing. I wasn't reading the books. I wasn't listening to the tapes. I wasn't taking notes. I wasn't setting goals. And that's when Mr. Schoaf came along and said, "Jim, if you want life to change, you've got to change." That hit me. He told me that discipline is the beginning of a miracle. I didn't understand that. So I asked him what he meant by it, and here's what he said. He said, "Every book you read is an ounce. Every class you attend is an ounce. Every goal you set is an ounce. And when you add those up, you attract the miracle." I thought, my goodness, I never saw it that way before. See, regret doesn't happen in one day. It sneaks up. It's the result of years of neglect, years of drifting, years of saying, "You'll do it tomorrow." You skip the ounce today, you skip it tomorrow, and before long, you've got a ton. And the ton doesn't just weigh on your back, it weighs on your soul. You start saying things like, if only I'd started sooner, if only I'd listened. That's a heavy vocabulary. But here's what I love. Discipline is daily, and daily disciplines turn into habits, and habits turn into a lifestyle. You can start small. A little discipline in the morning, a little discipline in the evening, a few ounces. That's all. I tell people, don't try to change your whole world overnight. That's a good way to get discouraged. Just pick up an ounce. Read for 10 minutes. Write down one idea. Walk for 15 minutes. Save $5. That's light. Anybody can carry that. And if you do it today, and then you do it tomorrow, and then the next day, you're on your way. I remember Mr. Schoaf told me to start keeping a journal, and I thought, what for? What do I have to write about? But you see, Mr. Schoaf saw something in me that I was having a hard time seeing. He said, "Jim, one day your words might be valuable. You got to capture them. Capture your experiences, your ideas, your lessons. You can't leave that to your memory. And when a wise man says it's a good idea to do something, it's probably a good idea, right?" So I started. Just a few notes at first, ounces. Over time, I built a treasure chest of ideas, stories, insights. That journal became one of my most valuable possessions, not because it was heavy, but because it was filled with light. And all it cost me was a little discipline. I couldn't imagine the regret of never writing this stuff down, keeping a record. How many people go through life and forget their lessons, forget their inspirations, forget the turning points? That's regret. And when they're old, they say, I wish I'd written it down. See, the ounces were there all along, but they passed them by. Here's a phrase I want you to remember. The smallest discipline, if done daily, can make the biggest difference over time. That's why I don't underestimate the little things, because little things don't stay little. They compound. And when they compound, they either work for you or they work against you. That's the difference between discipline and regret. So when people ask me, Mr. Rohn, where should I start? I tell them, start anywhere. Pick up an ounce. Doesn't matter if it's health, wealth, relationship, career. Just don't wait. Because the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. And once regret sets in, you'll wish you had started when it was light. Here's what I want every one of you to realize. If you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. They got themselves to worry about. Let this be a wake-up call. It can be a little hard, yes, but it's simple. Designing your life is nothing more than discipline applied with a vision. A little planning, a little follow-through, a little ounce today, a little ounce tomorrow. That's how you design a life. Think about it. You can drift for 5 years, or you can discipline yourself for 5 years. And those two paths don't take you to the same place. Drifting takes you somewhere you don't want to go. Discipline takes you somewhere you meant to be. And the price is small. An ounce here, an ounce there. People say, but Mr. Rohn, it's hard to discipline myself. It's hard to stick the diet. It's hard to quit smoking. Of course it is. But here's the key. It's harder not to. It's hard to read when you're tired. But it's harder to be stupid. It's hard to save when you want to spend. But it's harder to be broke. It's hard to exercise when you'd rather sit. But it's harder to be sick. Everything is hard. You just have to choose which hard you want. Ounces or tons. There are only two pains in life. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of discipline is measured in ounces. It's light. You feel it, but it doesn't crush you. The pain of regret, though, that's measured in tons. That's the pain that will sit on your chest and not let you breathe. That's the pain of if only. And every person must choose which pain they will endure. When I was a young man, I looked around at some of my friends. We were all about the same age, same background, same town. But after a few years, some were doing better, some were doing worse. And that made me curious, and I started asking why. The answer wasn't luck, it wasn't fate, it was discipline. Some picked up the ounces, others ignored them, and over time the gap widened. One group was enjoying success, the other was drowning in regret. You see, success is not an event, it's a process. And regret is not an event, it's a process. Both take time to accumulate. And the question is, what are you accumulating? Ounces or tons? Are you stacking small disciplines that lift you up? Or are you stacking small neglects that weigh you down? There's a Bible verse that says, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, and poverty shall come like a thief in the night. Notice it doesn't say poverty comes all at once. It comes little by little. Just as wealth, health, wisdom, and reputation come little by little. That's the way life works. Increment by increment. Discipline by discipline. Now, you don't have to be religious for that to make sense. To use that story as inspiration in your life. So if you've wasted the last 10 years, and it's easy to do, here's my question for you. How do you plan to spend the next 10 years? Because here's the truth. No matter how many tons you've collected, you can start again. You can pick up ounces today. You can change direction today. But you have to decide. Nobody can make that choice for you. Tell me, what ounces are you willing to pick up? Is it time to start your library? Is it time to take a walk in the morning? Is it time to sit down with your spouse and really talk? Is it time to put a little money away? Don't underestimate the small step. The small step is the seed of the giant oak. And don't wait for perfect timing. Perfect timing never comes. The seasons will always change. Winter will follow fall. Spring will follow winter. Summer will follow spring. That's set. What isn't set is what you do in the season. You can plant or you can procrastinate. You can pick up the ounces or you can pile up the regret. That choice is always yours. When I first started traveling and speaking, I noticed something interesting. People in every city, in every country, all had the same challenges. Different languages, different customs, but the same struggle. They wanted success without discipline. They wanted the harvest without planting the seed. They wanted the reward without paying the price. And I'd tell them the same thing I'm telling you. You can't cheat the seasons. You can't skip the ounces. Let's say you plant in the spring. You plow the ground, you put in the seed, you water, you weed, you wait. Come fall, you've got a harvest. That's the reward of discipline. Now suppose you skip the planting. You say, no way, that's just too much work. Well, in the fall, you'll have nothing but regret. That's the way life is built. It's fair. It's just. It gives each person the same seasons. The difference is whether you take the ounces or let them slip by. Discipline builds dignity. When you keep a promise to yourself, you walk taller. When you finish what you start, you look people in the eye. That's dignity. And it comes from discipline. Regret, on the other hand, steals dignity. It makes you hide. It makes you excuse. It makes you settle. And that's a heavy weight to carry. Now, I want you to think about your reputation. That's another place where ounces matter. You show up on time. You keep your word. You do what you said you would do. Ounces. But over time, people trust you. They recommend you. They open doors for you. That's reputation. On the other side, you miss appointments. You don't follow through. You cut corners. It doesn't seem like much at first, but those small neglects pile up, and pretty soon, your reputation is gone. That's tons. Let's talk about money. Life isn't all about money, but it's something that we all most certainly have in common. So we got to keep our eyes on our money. And money is another place where discipline is light and regret is heavy. Saving $1 is light. Spending it all is light too, but the regret later is crushing. The ounce of discipline is to put something away each time you earn. Doesn't matter how small. That small habit repeated creates financial independence. But the ton of regret is to reach retirement with nothing set aside, nothing to show for all those years of work. That's a burden nobody wants. Health works the same way. An ounce of discipline is to eat an apple. An ounce of discipline is to take a walk. An ounce of discipline is to skip the second dessert. But regret in health, that's the hospital to medicine, the lost energy, the limited life. See how the principle never changes? Ounces versus tons. And here's the big one that's easy to miss in the day-to-day. Relationships. You see, relationships are built on little disciplines. Listening, writing a note, saying thank you, being kind. Those are ounces. They don't take much. But regret in relationships, That's the apology never spoken, the call never made, the time never given. And when the chance is gone, the regret is unbearable. So here's the challenge I give you. Look across your life. Health, wealth, time, relationships, career, learning. Where do you need to pick up the ounces? Don't try to do it all. Just pick one area, 1 ounce today. Because if you don't, those little neglects are going to turn into a weight too heavy to carry. And one day, you'll look back and wish you had done the simple things when they were still simple. What's easy to do is also easy not to do. And that's where people get caught. The ounce of discipline is easy, but it's also easy to neglect. Reading a page is easy. Skipping a page is easy. Saving $1 is easy. Spending it is easy. Taking a walk is easy. Sitting down is easy. And life doesn't yell at you when you neglect the easy things. It just waits. And then one day it hands you the bill. And the bill always comes in tons, not ounces. That's why maturity is so important. Maturity is the ability to choose discipline today so you don't carry regret tomorrow. Maturity is saying, you know, I'll take the pain now so I can enjoy the reward later. Children don't think that way. They want candy now, play now, spend now. Adults are supposed to see further down the road. But have you noticed? Some people never grow up. They're 40, 50, still chasing the shortcut, still avoiding the ounces. And what they get instead is regret. I'm telling you, life has 2 classrooms. The classroom of discipline and the classroom of regret. Both will teach you something. The difference is, discipline teaches you early, cheap, and light. Regret teaches you late, expensive, and heavy. Which teacher do you want? When I first saw all those big houses in Beverly Hills, the nice cars and all that, I'd think, I wonder what they know that I don't. Later, I found out. It wasn't one big secret. It was a collection of small disciplines, daily, consistent, ordinary disciplines stacked up over years. That's what built the house. That's what bought the car. That's what created the lifestyle. And it hit me. Success is not exotic. It's basic. It's doing the small things with discipline instead of letting them slide into regret. And do not forget, regret doesn't just cost you things. It costs you potential. It costs you the person you could have been. You don't just lose the money you didn't save. You lose the freedom, the options, the opportunities that money could have given you. You don't just lose the health you didn't protect. You lose the energy, the adventure, the vitality that health could have brought you. You don't just lose the relationship you didn't nurture. You lose the memories, the moments, the legacy you could have built. That's why regret weighs tons. It steals the unseen, not just the seen. Now, some people ask, Mr. Rohn, can I really turn it around if I've already built up a mountain of regret? The answer is yes, but you must decide now. You can't change the past, but you can change the future. You can't get back yesterday, but you can start picking up ounces today. And here's the miracle. An ounce today not only creates future reward, it also lightens the load of past regret. Discipline has a way of redeeming lost time. So let me challenge you tonight. Don't leave your life to chance. Don't leave it to drift. Drift leads to regret. Design leads to discipline. And discipline leads to success. Look at your calendar. Look at your bank account. Look at your health. Look at your relationships. Each one is telling you, are you picking up ounces or are you stacking tons? And if you're not happy with the answer, don't despair. Just begin. Begin today. Pick up the book. Take the walk. Make the call. Save the $1. Write the idea. Do the simple, small, ounce-sized things. Because over time, those ounces become the life you want. And if you don't, well, you already know the alternative. Discipline also shows up in your career. The ounce of being prepared, the ounce of learning a new skill, the ounce of arriving early, the ounce of giving more than you're paid for. That's how careers are built. And that's how influence is earned. But the regret of neglecting your career is watching others advance while you stay stuck. It's realizing you had the chance, but didn't take it. That regret will haunt you if you let it. And let me add one more. The spirit. Discipline in the spirit is daily reflection, gratitude, prayer, study. It's keeping your values in front of you. That's ounces. But regret in the spirit is a restless soul. A life lived without purpose, without meaning. That's not just heavy, that's crushing. So here's the lesson. No area of life is exempt. Ounces of discipline add up to a harvest of reward. Tons of regret pile up to a life of sorrow. The question is not whether you'll carry something. The question is what? Everybody carries something. The disciplined carry ounces. The undisciplined carry tons. When you think about it, the greatest gift you can give yourself is discipline. Because discipline gives you wealth without fear, health without regret, relationships without bitterness, career without stagnation, and spirit without emptiness. Discipline is the ounce that opens the door to the good life. And the greatest tragedy I've seen is people who could have had it all, but didn't. Not because they weren't capable, not because they weren't smart, but because they neglected the small disciplines. And then years later, they carry the heavy weight of regret. And I don't want that for you. That's why I'm pressing this point so hard, because if you'll pick up the ounces, you'll never know the tons. And that's the way to live. But here's the thing. Discipline is not just about avoiding regret. It's about creating a life so rich, so full, so meaningful, that regret never even has a place to land. Discipline doesn't just spare you from sorrow. It gives you joy, pride, freedom. That's the payoff. You see, life will ask you for the price. You can pay with ounces of discipline up front, or you can pay with tons of regret at the end. But imagine the alternative. Imagine being able to say, I did it. I built it. I became it. I lived it. That's the testimony of discipline. That's the weight that lifts you instead of crushing you. So tell me, what would your life look like if you committed, really committed, to discipline for the next 5 years? Just 5. If you read the books, saved the money, exercised the body, nurtured the relationships, sharpened the skills, what would happen? I'll tell you. You'd look back in 5 years and be amazed at the difference. Because discipline compounds. Ounce upon ounce upon ounce. And suddenly, you're living a life you once only imagined. But if you neglect it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll face the tons. And you'll say, I wish I had done it differently. And there is no heavier phrase than that. Those words weigh more than gold, more than steel, more than stone. They crush the heart. That's why I'm challenging you tonight. I've met people at the end of their careers, at the end of their lives, and I've heard both kinds of stories. One group says, I'm glad I did it that way. The other says, I wish I hadn't. That's the dividing line. Discipline or regret, ounces or tons. So how do you make sure you're on the right side? You decide. You decide to pay the small price now instead of the big price later. You decide to trade ease for effort, comfort for growth, distraction for focus. You decide to pick up the book, lace up the shoes, make the call, write the plan. You decide to pay ounces instead of tons, And here's the key. You don't wait for motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is stronger than motivation. Discipline says, I'll do it whether I feel like it or not. That's the power. And once you've practiced it, it becomes who you are. It becomes identity. You are disciplined. You are the kind of person who does what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. And that identity is what carries you. Now think of the legacy you're building, because discipline isn't just about you. It's about those who watch you, follow you, learn from you. Your children, your friends, your colleagues, they're watching. And when they see you practice discipline, they're inspired. They learn. And they too avoid the tons. But if all they see is neglect, if all they see is regret, that's the inheritance you leave them. And that's too heavy a weight to pass on. So tonight, I urge you, pick up the ounces, not just for you, but for everyone who depends on you, everyone who looks to you, everyone who will one day remember you, because the memory of a disciplined life is light, uplifting, inspiring. The memory of a regretful life is heavy, sorrowful, and it lingers long after you're gone. Choose ounces, always ounces. They're light, they're doable, and they lead to the good life. Now I want to close with this thought. Life is a balance sheet. On one side, discipline. On the other, regret. And every day, every choice, you add to one column or the other. At the end of your life, the totals will be clear. And you'll either smile at the ounces you carried or weep at the tons you collected. And the difference is so small, it's almost invisible. It's whether you get up when the alarm rings, whether you read a few pages, whether you make the call, whether you set aside the dollar, whether you take the walk. Small things, easy things, ounce-sized things. And that's what makes life fair, because anyone can do it. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be famous. You don't need a big degree. You just need the willingness to carry the ounces. Now, let me tell you what happens when you practice discipline. You begin to respect yourself. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to walk with dignity. And that self-respect builds confidence. That confidence builds action. That action builds success. And success attracts more success. That's the cycle. It all starts with the ounce of discipline. And here's what happens when you don't. You doubt yourself. You question yourself. You shrink. You make excuses. You justify. And that erosion of self-respect is heavier than any physical burden. That's the weight of regret. That's what makes people bitter, cynical, small. That's why I say regret doesn't just weigh tons. It breaks the spirit. So the choice is yours. Ounces or tons, light or heavy, joy or sorrow. And don't think you have forever to decide. Life is short. The clock is ticking. And every day you delay, the ounces slip away and the tons begin to form. That's the danger of neglect. It compounds silently. But so does discipline. That's the opportunity. And I want you to walk out of here tonight with a decision. A simple, clear decision to choose ounces, to carry them gladly, to make discipline your constant companion. Not because it's easy, not because it's fun, but because it's worth it. Worth it for your health, your wealth, your relationships, your career, your future, your legacy. And years from now, when someone asks you what your secret is, you can tell them the truth, that you picked up the ounces so you never had to carry the tons, that you chose the light pain of discipline instead of the crushing weight of regret, that you designed your life instead of drifting into sorrow. That's the good life. That's the philosophy I've lived, and that's what I want for you. So tonight, take the ounces. Tomorrow, take them again. And soon you'll look back and realize you built a life you're proud of, a life with no regrets. And that is the best reward any of us can ask for. You will not rise above the level of your discipline. You can have the best ideas, the strongest ambition, the clearest goals. But if you can't lead yourself consistently, you will fall short every single time. Discipline is the foundation of everything that lasts. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's what separates the people who talk about potential from the ones who actually deliver on it. Most people underestimate the role discipline plays in building a meaningful life. They treat it like a side tool instead of a central pillar. They think they need motivation when what they really need is structure. They think they need to feel inspired when what they actually need is to stop negotiating with their own excuses. Discipline is the bridge between intention and execution. It's the trait that shows up long after the mood has left. It's what drives consistency. It's what builds character. It's what creates trust with yourself. Because when you become someone who does what they say, your self-respect grows, your confidence grows, your influence grows. This isn't about punishment. Discipline is not about being rigid or robotic. It's about being clear. It's about being aligned. It's about building habits that support who you're becoming, not who you've been. Discipline isn't about making life harder. It's about removing chaos, about reducing unnecessary decisions, about building rhythm so you can create momentum. The truth is, most people don't lack potential. They lack follow-through. They're good at starting, bad at finishing, good at getting inspired, bad at staying locked in, not because they don't care, but because they've never trained their discipline. They've never structured their life to support it. They've never replaced their patterns. You can't expect to reach your goals with the same behavior that's kept you stuck. You can't expect to break through while still defaulting to the same habits that sabotage your momentum. Change requires more than effort. It requires discipline, daily, quietly, repeatedly. Discipline is the skill that unlocks every other one. It makes learning easier because you stay consistent. It makes progress faster because you reduce friction. It makes performance sustainable because you're not relying on how you feel. You're moving from what you've decided. The challenge is, discipline rarely feels good in the moment. It often feels inconvenient, boring, repetitive. But over time, it delivers something motivation never can. Real, lasting results. And the more you train it, the more normal it becomes. Until one day, the things that used to require effort become part of your identity. There are 7 core techniques that sharpen this trait. Not fluff, not theory. Proven ways to build real discipline that holds under pressure. That doesn't collapse under distraction. That becomes a system you can trust, not a feeling you have to chase. These techniques are not for people who want it easy. They're for people who are ready to stop starting over, who are tired of hoping and ready to lead, who are done making promises they don't keep. This isn't about turning into someone else. It's about becoming who you said you were. It's about removing the gaps between your intention and your behavior. It's about replacing emotional decisions with aligned ones. It's about building a life where discipline doesn't feel like effort. It feels like integrity. The first technique to enhance your self-discipline is to eliminate negotiation. That internal debate, the voice that asks if you really have to do it today, the reasoning that tells you it's okay to push something until tomorrow, the logic that justifies easing up just this once has to be silenced. Because the moment you begin to negotiate with discipline, you lose to your feelings. And feelings are unreliable. You cannot win long-term if every action requires a conversation. If every decision depends on how you feel in the moment, then the moment controls you, not your plan, not your vision, your mood. And moods lie. They shift. They change based on sleep, stress, weather, other people's words, your own doubt. If your behavior is dictated by something that unpredictable, then your results will be just as unstable. Discipline begins when negotiation ends. When there's no question, no debate, no maybe. It's scheduled, so it's done. It's part of the process, so it's non-negotiable. You stop needing to feel inspired and start committing to the standard. You don't ask whether or not you're going to show up. You just show up. The key here is pre-decision. Most people try to make decisions in the moment, but by the time the moment arrives, you're tired, you're distracted, you're emotional, you're not clear. And when you're not clear, you negotiate. That's why your standards need to be set in advance. Your rules, your routines, your commitments, they're already decided. And when they're decided, your mind doesn't have to waste energy figuring it out all over again. You do it because it's who you are now. Not because it's easy, not because you feel like it, but because it's the rule, the system, the identity. That's how real discipline is built. Through alignment, not adrenaline. Through principle, not preference. Through non-negotiable habits that become part of your operating system. The best athletes in the world don't train when they feel like it. They train because that's what the schedule demands. The best leaders don't make decisions based on whether they feel powerful. They follow their process. The best creators don't rely on motivation. They rely on their system, and that's what separates them. Not talent, not excitement, structure, discipline, repetition. So how do you eliminate negotiation? You build routines. You anchor behaviors to time, to triggers, to identity. You don't just say you're going to be more disciplined. You decide exactly what that looks like. What time? What day? What action? You make it specific. And once it's on the calendar, it's as good as done. You don't leave open space for maybe. You remove the word later from your vocabulary. You get honest about what's actually essential. You cut the options that waste your time. You simplify, and you remove friction from starting. Because the easier it is to begin, the less room there is to talk yourself out of it. Every time you override the negotiation, your identity shifts. You show yourself who's in charge. You prove that your vision matters more than your mood, that your purpose isn't subject to your feelings, that your standard isn't up for discussion, and that internal power begins to build. Eventually, you'll notice something new. The voice that used to say, skip it, gets quieter. The resistance gets weaker because your pattern has changed. You're not hesitating. You're acting. You're not stalling. You're executing. And with each repetition, the negotiation fades and discipline takes its place. This isn't about forcing yourself forever. It's about retraining the voice in your head to support your future instead of sabotaging it. It's about shifting the internal conversation from, can I get out of this? To, this is who I am. From, how do I feel? To, what did I say I'd do? That's a different level of leadership. Because when you eliminate negotiation, you create momentum. You move faster. You build confidence. Not because it's easy, but because it's automatic. It's in your calendar. It's in your code. You don't wait for the right moment. You create rhythm. You create flow. You remove the drag of indecision, and you gain clarity, energy, and progress. The second technique to enhance your self-discipline is to master micro-commitments. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. But the secret to unlocking that year is hidden in the day, in the next hour, in the next 5 minutes, in the next decision. Discipline is not built in big declarations. It's built in small follow-through. Micro-commitments are specific, time-bound, doable actions that anchor your focus and reinforce your identity. They are the daily proof that you are becoming who you said you were. When people fail to stay disciplined, it's usually not because they aimed too low. It's because they aimed too vague. I'll start working out. I'll eat better. I'll be more focused. None of those statements have teeth. They have no time, no trigger, no target. And without that, you can't measure them. But when you say, I'm going to write for 25 minutes after I finish my first cup of coffee, that's a micro commitment. I'm going to do 50 push-ups before I get in the shower. That's a micro commitment. It's not about willpower. It's about setting up the next small win so that your brain begins to expect discipline. The magic of micro commitments is that they train your self-respect. Every time you follow through, you're not just completing a task, you're casting a vote for the person you're becoming. That vote compounds. And when you string enough micro commitments together, you start to build a track record. And that track record becomes confidence. Confidence is not a feeling, it's a pattern. It's the recognition that you can trust yourself to do what you said you'd do. And you don't need huge wins to build it. You need consistency. You need rhythm. You need proof. Micro commitments give you that proof. They are the brick by brick foundation of your identity. When life gets overwhelming, the mistake most people make is trying to fix everything at once. They go all in on a 30-day plan, change their diet, overhaul their routine, and within a week, they're exhausted. Because they didn't build endurance, they tried to sprint through transformation. But discipline isn't built that way. It's built through consistency, through simplicity, through wins you can stack every day. And when you master the art of small wins, you become someone who doesn't need hype to act. You become someone who finishes what they start. Not because it's exciting, but because it's what you do. You get addicted to completion, to momentum, to discipline that's sustainable. Micro commitments create data. They give you something to track because you can't improve what you don't measure. And when your discipline feels off, you can go back to the basics. What were you doing when you felt strongest? What small actions had you locked in? What shifted? What needs to come back? That's how you lead yourself. With pattern awareness, with personal accountability. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to show up for the next 5 minutes, then the next, then the next. One small promise, one small action, one small win. That's how discipline becomes a part of you. Not because you changed everything, but because you stopped abandoning the little things that mattered. You start your day with clarity. What is the one thing I will finish today no matter what? What's the trigger? What's the time frame? What's the first step? That's it. Then you build the day around it. Not hoping to feel ready, not waiting for motivation, just acting from your decision. The people who stay disciplined aren't more disciplined than you. They're better at setting up their day to support it. They use small commitments as anchors. They create structure where most people create stress. They start simple build consistently and never stop. That's what mastery looks like. The third technique to enhance your self-discipline is to master the art of recovery. Most people associate discipline with intensity, pushing harder, grinding longer, powering through. But lasting discipline isn't just about the effort you exert. It's about the energy you manage. And if you don't know how to recover, you'll burn out. Not because you weren't capable, but because you never learned how to sustain. Discipline requires energy. Focus requires energy. Resilience requires energy. And when you deplete that energy without replenishing it, you start to slip. You stop thinking clearly. You make poor decisions. You procrastinate, not because you're lazy, but because you're drained. Your willpower fades, your frustration grows, and your results stall. This is where recovery becomes strategic. Not passive, not lazy, strategic. Recovery is not what you do when you're too tired to keep going. Recovery is what you build into your life so you can keep going. It's proactive, it's planned, it's prioritized, and the people who win long-term don't wait to recover until they collapse. They recover so they don't collapse. Most people treat recovery as a reward, something you get after you've pushed too far. But the disciplined see it differently. They know that rest is not an escape from the mission. It's fuel for it. They understand that true recovery increases their output, sharpens their clarity, and allows them to lead from overflow instead of survival. So how do you apply this? First, you build rhythms, not just routines. Rhythms mean you understand the natural cycles of performance. You don't try to be on all the time. You push when it's time to push, and you unplug when it's time to rest. You create space for recovery, not as a reaction to burnout, but as a consistent part of your life. You set boundaries around your time, around your inputs, around your energy. You stop saying yes to everything just to be polite. You protect your morning. You protect your night. You protect the spaces in between where your mind needs silence. Because clarity doesn't come in chaos. It comes in stillness. You schedule recovery the same way you schedule effort. You don't leave it to chance. You build it in. Movement, rest, nutrition, stillness, reflection, boundaries, silence. You create habits that allow your nervous system to reset so that your actions are not just force, but precision. The more responsibility you carry, the more recovery you need. Not because you're weak, but because you're building something strong. Because the weight of leadership, of growth, of discipline, it compounds. And if you don't manage that weight, it starts managing you. Recovery means emotional recovery. It means creating space to process your thoughts, your fears, your pressure. Not pretending you're fine, not suppressing, but facing what you're carrying so it doesn't leak into your behavior, so it doesn't sabotage your clarity, so it doesn't distort your decisions. You give yourself space to reset, not because you want to slow down, but because you want to speed up. You want to make better decisions. You want to think more clearly. You want to operate from alignment, not exhaustion. And that alignment doesn't come from doing more. It comes from recovering better. Recovery is what keeps your discipline from turning into burnout. It's what keeps your ambition from turning into anxiety. It's what keeps your focus from collapsing into fatigue. You don't build endurance by pushing nonstop. You build endurance by learning how to recharge. The people who sustain their discipline are not superhuman. They just treat energy like a currency. They spend it wisely. They replenish it consistently. They don't just plan their workload, they plan their recovery. They lead themselves through seasons of stress with structure. You are not weak for needing recovery. You are wise for choosing it. Because the goal is not just to win today, it's to keep winning, to keep leading, to keep rising. And that requires rest, not as escape, but as strategy. Not when it's convenient, but because it's essential. The fourth technique to enhance your self-discipline is to raise the cost of inconsistency. Most people stay inconsistent because inconsistency doesn't feel like it costs them anything in the moment. Skip one workout doesn't seem like a big deal. Snooze the alarm once, no real damage. Break the promise, just this time, you'll try again tomorrow. And because nothing explodes immediately, the pattern continues. But it's not free. Every time you break your word to yourself, you lose trust. You chip away at your belief. You tell your subconscious that your goals are optional, that your standards are flexible, that your identity is negotiable. And that erosion isn't loud, but it is powerful. Because discipline isn't just about performance. It's about the story you believe about yourself. If your story is, I do what I say, you show up different. If your story is, I break promises, your behavior starts to reflect that. And that story is shaped not by what you say, but by what you reinforce. Repetition builds identity, and inconsistency builds the wrong one. So if you want to change the pattern, you have to make inconsistency expensive. You have to feel the weight of breaking your word. You have to create enough internal pressure that skipping the behavior hurts more than doing it. That sounds harsh, but it's effective because discipline is easier when the alternative feels unacceptable. You do this in two ways. First, through consequences. You set real, meaningful penalties for not following through. Not to punish yourself, but to condition your behavior. Miss your workout? Donate to a cause you strongly oppose. Don't finish your writing session? Call someone you respect and tell them. Skip your planning time? Hand over something uncomfortable. Money, privilege, comfort. The goal isn't shame, it's accountability. It's making inconsistency visible, tangible, felt. Because what gets measured gets managed. And if inconsistency is invisible, it will never be corrected. You have to feel it, see it, name it, then you correct it. Second, through reflection. If you miss a standard, you document it. You don't pretend it didn't happen. You write it down. You ask yourself, what was the trigger? What was the excuse? What decision led to it? You track your patterns so they stop owning you, because you can't fix what you don't face. This practice of making inconsistency visible rewires your brain. It shifts your relationship with discipline, because now your behavior is tied to identity, not just outcome. You stop saying, I'll try, and start saying, I don't miss. You stop making excuses and start making adjustments. This means you set minimums, because discipline isn't about doing it perfectly. It's about doing something every day, no matter what. You decide what the floor is. Even on your worst day, you hit that floor. That baseline, that minimum effort that keeps the muscle alive. That's how discipline becomes unbreakable. Your consistency doesn't have to look dramatic. It doesn't have to impress anyone. It just has to be reinforced. Repetition creates permanence, and permanence creates peace. Because now you don't waste energy trying to get back on track. You never left the track. Even when it was hard, even when you were tired, you showed up. That's what matters. When inconsistency is expensive, Discipline becomes easier. Not because it's fun, but because the alternative feels heavier. You've trained your nervous system to reject drift, to feel out of place when your standard slips, to catch the slide before it becomes a spiral. That's power. That's awareness. That's leadership. The fifth technique to enhance your self-discipline is to anchor your habits to identity. Behavior driven by willpower fades. Behavior driven by identity lasts. Because when something becomes who you are, not just what you do, it gets reinforced by your decisions, your language, your environment, and your expectations. Discipline becomes sustainable when it's no longer about force, but alignment. Most people try to change their habits without changing how they see themselves. They say, I want to be consistent, but they still identify as someone who struggles to follow through. They say, I'm going to get in shape, but they still carry the mindset of someone who only trains when they're motivated. That's why change doesn't last, because their actions are outpacing their identity. You can push yourself with effort, but effort without alignment drains you. It turns discipline into a fight. But when you begin to shift how you see yourself, when you start saying, this is who I am now, the behavior that felt forced starts to feel natural. It becomes the default, not the exception. You do this by making your standards part of your identity language. You stop saying, I need to work out, and start saying, I'm someone who doesn't miss workouts. You stop saying, I'm trying to be focused, and start saying, I'm someone who protects their time. You shift the frame from what I hope to do to how I already live. This doesn't mean you lie to yourself. It means you practice becoming. You act from the future. You embody the version of you who already lives that way, and you back it with action, even if it's small, even if it's uncomfortable, because each action you take in alignment with that identity strengthens it. Identity is not fixed. It's built. It's trained. It's formed through repetition, through consistent evidence, through small wins that stack up and eventually become truth. You don't need to believe it fully to begin. You just need to choose it and behave accordingly. Start with one area. Pick a habit you want to build and ask, who is the version of me that lives like this every day? Describe that person in detail. How do they think? How do they act when it's inconvenient? What decisions do they make when no one's watching? Then you become that person before the results show up. Because the fastest way to change your life is to stop making decisions based on your current identity and start making them based on your future one. The version of you who already has discipline doesn't ask, should I do this today? They've already decided. The standard is non-negotiable. Anchoring your habits to identity means you create an environment that reflects it. If you see yourself as someone who writes daily, your space reflects that. If you see yourself as someone who respects their health, your fridge reflects that. If you see yourself as someone who owns their focus, your schedule reflects that. Environment is an extension of identity, and alignment between the two is what makes behavior automatic. You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your identity. If your current self-concept still sees discipline as a chore, it will always feel like effort. But when your concept of self becomes clear, aligned, elevated, your actions follow. Not because you're trying, because you've trained. And here's the beauty. The more you live like the version of you you're becoming, the faster you become them. Each day you hold the standard. Each day you show up aligned. Each day you reinforce the behavior. You stop needing to force the behavior. It becomes part of your nature, part of your rhythm, part of your identity. The sixth technique to enhance your self-discipline is to develop pattern recognition. You can't out-discipline a pattern you don't understand. If you don't know what breaks your focus, what drains your energy, what triggers your procrastination, then you'll keep trying to fix your life through willpower while repeating the same cycles over and over again. Discipline that lasts is never just about forcing behavior. It's about studying behavior. Every action you take is part of a pattern. Every excuse you make has a rhythm. Every time you say you'll start tomorrow, every time you convince yourself it's okay to skip just this once, every time you fall back into old habits. That didn't happen randomly. That happened because you were following a script, a pattern that you've likely repeated for years. Most people don't lack effort. They lack awareness. They try harder without noticing where their energy leaks. They set higher goals without understanding their own resistance. And then they get discouraged when they burn out or fall short. Not because they didn't care, but because they were trying to perform without diagnosing the problem. Pattern recognition changes that. It turns discipline into precision. You start asking better questions. When do I usually drift? What situations cause me to quit? What time of day does my energy collapse? What conversations drain me? What foods make me tired? What thoughts show up right before I break my word? Those answers aren't random. They're maps. And once you can map your pattern, you can disrupt it. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop walking blindly into self-sabotage and start setting traps for your own excuses. You build in safeguards. You redesign the pattern before it repeats. That's not discipline through intensity. It's discipline through awareness. This is why journaling, reflection, and tracking your behavior matter. Not because it's trendy, but because you can't improve what you don't observe. If you're not noticing your tendencies, you're a slave to them. But when you become the kind of person who pays attention, you gain leverage. And leverage is what creates lasting change. You learn to recognize the early signs of drift. Drift doesn't start when you miss the workout. It starts when you start bargaining with yourself the night before. It doesn't start when you break your diet. It starts when you stop planning your meals. It doesn't start when you cancel your commitments. It starts when you stop checking your calendar. Discipline isn't just about how you act. It's about how early you catch the slide, how quickly you notice your own resistance, how honestly you audit your choices. The people who stay locked in aren't stronger. They're just faster at recognizing when they're slipping. They course correct in minutes, not months. You can train this. You can build the habit of checking in. You stop waiting for a breakdown to pay attention. You set review points, end-of-day check-ins, weekly audits. You ask, what did I do well today? What needs refinement? Where did I drift? What triggered it? What was I avoiding? That reflection builds self-leadership. And when you repeat that process consistently, you start to anticipate your own sabotage before it starts. You recognize the loop. You see the resistance. And instead of waiting to fail, you adjust. You pre-decide how you'll respond. You make a plan for the next time that same pattern tries to pull you off track. This is how you stop repeating the same year 10 times and calling it growth. You stop operating on default and start leading your behavior. You stop fighting fires and start preventing them. That's real discipline. Not the kind you show off, the kind you live. The seventh technique to enhance your self-discipline is to shorten the gap between intention and action. The longer you wait to move, the louder resistance gets. The more you think about it, the more reasons your brain will give you to delay it. That hesitation becomes a habit. And over time, your life starts to reflect that gap, not your goals. Discipline is a response pattern, not just doing the hard thing, but doing it fast, doing it without ceremony, without fanfare, without needing the stars to align. Because every second you spend thinking about whether or not to act is another second you train yourself to hesitate. And hesitation becomes doubt. Doubt becomes avoidance. Avoidance becomes regret. The disciplined don't wait until they feel ready. They don't wait until they have clarity on every detail. They don't need to feel like it. They've trained themselves to move as soon as the intention appears. The alarm rings, they get up. The idea shows up, they write it down. The task appears, they start it. No delay, no drama, just execution. This kind of responsiveness can be trained. It's a muscle. You start by noticing your lag time. From decision to action. How long do you wait? What excuse do you make? What friction shows up? Then you start reducing it. First by minutes, then seconds. Then it becomes instinct. The thought appears, and you're already moving. You can call it a 5-second window, a 2-second rule. Doesn't matter what you name it. What matters is this. If you don't act on the decision immediately, your mind will start looking for the exit. You'll start thinking about how hard it is, how tired you are, how it could wait. And by the time you finish that conversation, you've already lost. The people who win are not the ones who think the most. They're the ones who decide and move. They keep the gap between idea and action so small that doubt has no time to plant its roots. That's not recklessness. That's rhythm. It's pace. It's trusting your instinct, trusting your preparation, trusting your process. The moment you know what to do, start. Don't stall. Don't plan it to death. Don't stack it behind 10 other tasks that don't matter. Start, even if it's small, even if it's messy, even if you don't feel ready. Start. That shift in tempo will change your life. When you live this way, you build integrity with yourself. You train your brain to expect follow-through. You stop giving energy to hesitation and start pouring energy into motion. And motion creates momentum. Momentum creates belief, and belief reinforces behavior. You become someone who trusts themselves to act. And when you trust yourself to act, discipline becomes simple. Not always easy, but clear. You're not spending half your day in your head. You're not wrestling with procrastination. You're not constantly trying to generate courage. You've decided, and you're moving. This is why so many people feel stuck, not because they're incapable, but because they've built a habit of overthinking. They've made a routine out of resistance, and they think the solution is more planning, more research, more motivation. But the real solution is more movement. When the time comes to act, don't wait, don't drift, don't distract yourself. Start. Build that responsiveness like a reflex, like a discipline. Because that fast action, that lean into behavior, is what breaks the loop. That's what creates results. You now hold 7 techniques, 7 tools, 7 strategies that don't just talk about discipline, but build it, and they work. Not because they're flashy, not because they're new, but because they're rooted in truth, in behavior, in clarity, in repetition. They're not tricks, they're not hacks, they're foundations. And when you live them, not just study them, you become someone who leads themselves with intention instead of emotion. You've learned that discipline begins where negotiation ends. That every time you argue with your standard, you weaken your identity. But when you pre-decide what matters, when you stop looking for the mood to match your mission, everything gets simpler. Your day gets lighter. Your direction gets clearer. You don't hesitate, you move. You've learned the power of micro commitments. That small promises, kept daily, do more to change your future than giant leaps fueled by short-lived hype. You don't need a massive plan. You need movement, a pattern, a track record that reminds you, this is who I am now. That proof stacks. That proof leads. You've understood recovery is not weakness. It's strategy. That burnout doesn't come from effort alone, but from unmanaged energy. You've seen that the most disciplined people aren't always the ones who push hardest. They're the ones who protect their rhythm, who rest with intention, who build recovery into their routine so their performance can last. You've learned that inconsistency can't be tolerated, that if it doesn't cost you, you won't change it. That follow-through becomes real when the alternative feels unacceptable. You don't want to be perfect, but you can't afford to keep pretending inconsistency is harmless. Because every broken promise to yourself tells your brain that the standard doesn't matter. You've anchored discipline to identity. You've stopped trying to act like a disciplined person and started becoming one. Every action has become a vote. Every repetition has become evidence. And when your identity and your behavior align, discipline becomes your nature. You stop needing to push. You start moving in rhythm. You've studied your patterns. You've stopped blaming your circumstances. You've started owning your reactions. You've paid attention to what breaks your focus, what triggers your drift, what steals your time. And instead of reacting, you've built response. You've shortened the distance between who you want to be and how you show up. And you've closed the gap between intention and action. You've stopped waiting to feel ready. You've stopped treating hesitation like a habit. You've stopped giving your momentum away to doubt. You move now. You act now. You build now. You lead now. And that fast action is what creates compound change. Discipline isn't something you find. It's something you build, and you've been building it, brick by brick, decision by decision, day by day. You've stopped chasing the ideal version of yourself and started living as them. Not perfectly, but consistently. And that consistency, that's where the shift happens. This isn't the end of the work. This is the structure you return to, the mirror you check when you drift, the map you follow when the pressure hits. You're not going to get it right every time. But now, you have the tools. You know what to do when the resistance shows up. You know how to move through it. So lead yourself. Live the standard. Keep the promise. And every day that you do, discipline gets easier. Not because it's less demanding, but because you've stopped making it optional. Self-discipline is the cornerstone of success. It's the bridge between intention and action, between desire and accomplishment. No matter how talented or ambitious you are, without self-discipline, your potential remains untapped. Discipline is what transforms fleeting motivation into lasting habits and ensures that you keep moving forward, even on the days when the excitement fades or the road gets tough. It's not just about controlling your impulses or denying yourself pleasure. It's about making choices that align with your values and long-term goals. Self-discipline doesn't mean being perfect. It means being consistent. It means showing up, making progress, and staying committed to what truly matters. When you master self-discipline, you gain control over your life. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. You stop making excuses and start taking ownership. This mastery doesn't happen overnight, but with the right techniques, you can build the kind of discipline that will serve you for a lifetime. The first technique to master self-discipline is understanding the power of small commitments. Too often people think self-discipline is about making grand sacrifices or pushing themselves to extremes. They imagine it as something dramatic and overwhelming. But the truth is, discipline begins with small, manageable steps. Success doesn't come from one monumental effort. It's the result of consistently doing the little things that add up over time. Small commitments are powerful because they're achievable. When you commit to something small, you set yourself up for success. You're not overwhelmed by the size of the task, and you're not paralyzed by the fear of failure. Instead, you build momentum. Each small commitment you keep strengthens your belief in yourself and your ability to follow through. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Think about a habit you want to develop. Instead of trying to overhaul your entire routine overnight, start with a single, small commitment. Commit to 5 minutes of exercise, 1 page of reading, or swapping out one unhealthy snack. These small changes might not seem significant at first, but over time, they compound into meaningful progress. Consistency is the secret ingredient. When you keep your small commitments every day, you create a pattern of success. This pattern becomes a habit, and habits are the foundation of discipline. Once a habit is established, it requires less effort and willpower to maintain. What once felt difficult becomes automatic, freeing up your energy for bigger challenges. Another benefit of small commitments is that they help you build trust in yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you reinforce your confidence and self-worth. On the other hand, when you break a commitment, even a minor one, it chips away at your trust in your own abilities. This is why it's so important to set commitments that are realistic and achievable. You're better off starting small and building up than aiming too high and falling short. Discipline is about progress, not perfection. Don't let the fear of imperfection stop you from taking action. It's okay to stumble or make mistakes along the way. What matters is that you keep going. The key is to focus on the process, not just the outcome. Celebrate your efforts, no matter how small they seem. And remind yourself that each step forward brings you closer to your goal. Small commitments teach you the value of patience. In a world that often glorifies instant results, discipline requires you to think long-term. You may not see the impact of your small efforts right away, but if you trust the process and stay consistent, the results will come. This mindset shift is what separates those who give up too soon from those who achieve lasting success. Finally, small commitments help you build resilience. They prepare you for the bigger challenges ahead. By mastering the art of showing up and taking small, consistent actions, you develop the mental and emotional strength needed to tackle more significant obstacles. Each small victory builds your confidence and reinforces your ability to stay disciplined no matter what life throws your way. Mastering self-discipline through small commitments is about understanding that success isn't about doing everything at once. It's about doing the right things consistently. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, and trusting that your efforts will pay off. This technique lays the foundation for all the other techniques, giving you the stability and momentum you need to take on bigger challenges with confidence and focus. The second technique to master self-discipline is learning to prioritize what truly matters. Self-discipline isn't just about working harder. It's about working smarter. It's about focusing your energy on the things that align with your goals and values, while letting go of the distractions that pull you off course. Discipline without direction is like a ship without a compass. It doesn't matter how hard you row if you don't know where you're going. Prioritization begins with clarity. You have to know what you're aiming for. Too many people drift through life without a clear sense of purpose. They get caught up in busy work or other people's priorities and wonder why they never seem to make progress. The first step to mastering prioritization is taking the time to define your goals. What do you want to achieve? What kind of person do you want to become? What does success look like for you? Once you have a clear vision, you can begin to align your actions with that vision. One way to prioritize effectively is to identify your big rocks. These are the tasks, goals, or commitments that have the greatest impact on your life. Imagine your time is a jar. If you fill it with sand, small, insignificant tasks, there's no room for the big rocks. But if you put the big rocks in first, the sand will fit around them. Successful people focus on their big rocks first. They schedule time for their highest priorities and let everything else fall into place. Not everything can be a priority. One of the hardest but most important aspects of prioritization is learning to say no when you need to. Every time you say yes to something unimportant, you're saying no to something that truly matters. Discipline means being willing to disappoint others at times in order to stay true to your own goals. It means recognizing that your time and energy are limited and choosing to spend them wisely. Prioritization requires you to distinguish between what's urgent and what's important. Urgent tasks demand your immediate attention, but they're not always aligned with your long-term goals. Important tasks, on the other hand, are the ones that move you closer to your vision, even if they don't have pressing deadlines. Successful people focus on the important tasks first. They don't let the noise of urgency drown out the signal of importance. One technique for prioritizing is to plan your day the night before. Before you go to bed, take a few minutes to review your goals and identify the top 3 things you want to accomplish the next day. These should be tasks that align with your big rocks and make a meaningful impact. When you wake up, you'll have a clear sense of direction and purpose, which makes it easier to stay disciplined throughout the day. Another powerful tool is time blocking. Instead of reacting to your day as it unfolds, proactively schedule blocks of time for your most important tasks. Treat these blocks as sacred appointments with yourself. During these times, eliminate distractions and focus entirely on the task at hand. This approach not only helps you prioritize, but increases your efficiency and productivity. It's important to regularly reassess your priorities. Life is dynamic, and your goals and values may shift over time. What was a big rock 6 months ago might no longer be relevant today. Take time to reflect on whether your actions are still aligned with your vision. If they're not, make adjustments. Self-discipline is about being flexible enough to adapt while remaining committed to what truly matters. Prioritization isn't just about what you do, it's about what you don't do. Eliminating or delegating low-value tasks frees up your time and energy for the things that matter most. Ask yourself, is this task necessary? Could someone else do it better or faster? Does it align with my goals? If the answer is no, it's time to let it go. A disciplined approach to prioritization involves managing your energy, not just your time. Certain tasks require more focus and creativity than others. Identify the times of day when you're at your peak and schedule your most demanding work during those hours. Reserve less demanding tasks for when your energy levels naturally dip. By aligning your priorities with your energy, you maximize your effectiveness. The true power of prioritization lies in its ability to create momentum. When you focus on your big rocks and tackle them consistently, you build a sense of accomplishment and progress. This momentum fuels your discipline, making it easier to stay committed to your goals. Conversely, when you spend your time on trivial tasks, you feel busy but unfulfilled, which can drain your motivation and lead to burnout. Finally, remember that prioritization is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. It's about aligning your actions with your values and goals, so every effort you make brings you closer to the life you want to create. Discipline without prioritization is effort wasted. When you master this technique, you take control of your time and energy, ensuring that every step you take is a step in the right direction. Next, the third technique to master self-discipline is building habits that automate your success. Discipline often gets mistaken for sheer willpower, as if success comes from forcing yourself to make the right choices every single day. But here's the truth. Willpower is a finite resource. If you rely on it alone, you'll burn out quickly. That's why the most disciplined people don't leave their success to chance. They build habits that carry them forward automatically. Habits are the foundation of self-discipline because they reduce the need for constant decision-making. When something becomes a habit, you no longer have to wrestle with whether or not to do it. It becomes a natural part of your routine. This frees up your mental energy for more complex challenges and ensures that you're consistently taking actions that align with your goals. Building habits starts with small, consistent actions. Too often, people try to overhaul their entire lives overnight, only to abandon their efforts within weeks. Real, lasting change comes from starting small. If you want to start working out, don't aim to work out for an hour every day from the start. Commit to 5 minutes of movement. If you want to start reading more, commit to just 1 page a day. These small steps may seem insignificant, but they're the building blocks of greater transformation. The key to forming habits is consistency. It's not about perfection. It's about showing up every day, no matter how small the effort. Consistency creates momentum, and momentum makes it easier to keep going. Over time, your small actions compound into significant results. A single drop of water doesn't seem like much, but when those drops accumulate over time, they can carve through stone. One way to make habits stick is by attaching them to existing routines. This is known as habit stacking. If you want to start journaling, attach it to something you already do every day, like brushing your teeth or drinking your morning coffee. By linking that new habit to an established one, you create a natural cue that reminds you to take action. Environment plays a crucial role in habit formation. Your surroundings can either support or sabotage your efforts. If you're trying to eat healthier, stock your kitchen with nutritious foods and remove temptations. If you want to focus more on work, create a dedicated workspace free from distractions. Successful people design their environments to make good habits easy and bad habits difficult. Accountability is another powerful tool for building habits. When you share your goals with someone you trust, you create an additional layer of motivation to follow through. Knowing that someone else is invested in your progress can push you to stay consistent, even on days when you're tempted to skip. Tracking your habits is an effective way to reinforce them. Keep a simple chart or journal where you record your progress. Each time you complete a habit, mark it down. This creates a visual representation of your efforts and gives you a sense of accomplishment. It helps you identify patterns and areas for improvement. Building habits often requires replacing old, unproductive behaviors with new, constructive ones. This process begins with awareness. Take a close look at your current routines and identify the habits that are holding you back. Are you spending hours mindlessly watching the TV instead of working toward your goals? Are you hitting the snooze button instead of starting your day with purpose? Once you recognize these patterns, you can begin to replace them with habits that align with your vision. The timing of your habits matters too. Research shows that the earlier in the day you complete your key habits, the more likely you are to stick with them. This is because your willpower is strongest in the morning and tends to dwindle as the day goes on. By tackling your most important habits early, you set a positive tone for the rest of the day. Another crucial aspect of habit formation is celebrating your wins, no matter how small. Every time you follow through on a habit, take a moment to acknowledge your effort. These small celebrations reinforce the behavior and make it more likely to stick. Patience is essential when building habits. It's easy to get discouraged when you don't see immediate results, but remember that habits are about long-term transformation. Trust the process and focus on the act of showing up, day after day. Over time, the results will come. The beauty of habits is that they create a ripple effect. When you build one good habit, it often leads to others. You know, when you're working out, you usually eat better. You usually sleep better. You're usually more disciplined all around. Success breeds success, and habits are the catalyst. Ultimately, mastering self-discipline isn't about constantly battling your impulses. It's about setting up systems and routines that make success inevitable. When you build habits that align with your goals, you create a life where discipline feels less like an uphill battle and more like a natural rhythm. This is the power of habits. They free you from the constant struggle and allow you to channel your energy into growth, progress, and achievement. Next, the fourth technique to master self-discipline is developing the ability to delay gratification. This is one of the most defining characteristics of disciplined and successful people. It's the ability to resist the lure of short-term pleasure in favor of long-term rewards. This principle, though simple in concept, is a profound game changer in practice. delaying gratification begins with a clear understanding of your goals and values. If you don't have a compelling vision of what you're working toward, it's easy to be swayed by distractions or momentary indulgences. But when your goals are vivid and deeply meaningful, they serve as a powerful anchor. They remind you that every small sacrifice today is a step closer to a brighter future. This technique hinges on the understanding that discipline is not about deprivation. It's about choice. It's about choosing what matters most over what matters now. The key is to frame your decisions not as sacrifices, but as investments. Every time you delay gratification, you're not giving something up. You're gaining something far more valuable, a better version of yourself, a stronger foundation for success, or a dream realized. One way to strengthen your ability to delay gratification is by training your mind to focus on the long-term benefits rather than the short-term costs. Imagine you're tempted to skip a workout. Instead of fixating on the immediate discomfort, picture how good you'll feel after the session, how it contributes to your health, and how it aligns with your goals. This mental shift makes it easier to stay committed. Visualization is a powerful tool in this process. Spend time regularly imagining the outcomes you're working toward. See yourself achieving your goals and experiencing the rewards of your discipline. The clearer and more vivid this vision becomes, the stronger your motivation to delay gratification will be. When the pull of short-term pleasure arises, this vision serves as a reminder of what truly matters. Another technique is to break your goals into smaller milestones. Long-term rewards can feel distant and abstract, making it harder to stay motivated. By creating smaller, tangible milestones along the way, you give yourself more frequent opportunities to celebrate progress. Each milestone reached reinforces your belief in your ability to succeed and strengthens your commitment to the bigger picture. Temptation is inevitable, so part of mastering this technique is learning to manage it effectively. Successful people don't rely solely on willpower to resist temptation. They create environments that support their discipline. If you're trying to eat healthier, don't keep junk food in the house. If you're trying to stay focused on work, take all of those distractions away. These small adjustments make it easier to stay on track. Another strategy is to implement delay tactics. When you feel the urge to indulge in a distraction or temptation, commit to waiting just 5 or 10 minutes before acting on it. Often, this short pause is enough to diminish the intensity of the urge and give you time to refocus on your goals. This technique trains your brain to tolerate discomfort and strengthens your ability to resist immediate gratification. Delaying gratification requires a shift in how you perceive discomfort. Most people view discomfort as something to be avoided at all costs. But successful people see it as a sign of growth. They understand that discomfort is often the price of progress. When you embrace this mindset, you begin to see the value in temporary struggle because you know it's leading you somewhere worthwhile. Rewards and incentives can play a role in reinforcing delayed gratification. When you set a goal, attach a meaningful reward to its achievement. The anticipation of this reward can help you stay disciplined during challenging moments. However, the reward should be tied to the completion of the goal, not to each step along the way. This distinction ensures that the reward reinforces long-term success rather than short-term satisfaction. Accountability is another powerful tool. share your goals and commitments with someone you trust. Knowing that someone else is aware of your intentions can motivate you to stay disciplined. It adds an external layer of responsibility that complements your internal drive. Delaying gratification isn't just about big decisions. It's about mastering the small, everyday moments where discipline is tested. It's in choosing to stay focused for another hour instead of giving in to distraction. It's in saying no to an unnecessary expense to save for something more meaningful. It's in going to bed on time so you can wake up energized for the day ahead. These seemingly small choices, repeated consistently, shape your character and your results. Patience is the backbone of delayed gratification. In a world that often prioritizes instant results, patience can feel like a rare and difficult virtue. But it's one of the most rewarding. When you cultivate patience, you develop the resilience to keep going, even when the rewards aren't immediately visible. You learn to trust the process and focus on the progress you're making, no matter how incremental it may seem. The ability to delay gratification is tied to self-trust. When you consistently honor your commitments to yourself, you build confidence in your ability to follow through. This self-trust becomes a powerful motivator, reinforcing your belief that you're capable of achieving your goals. Over time, this positive feedback loop strengthens your discipline and makes it easier to resist short-term temptations. Ultimately, delaying gratification is about mastering your impulses and aligning your actions with your values and vision. It's about choosing to live with intention rather than being driven by fleeting desires. When you develop this skill, you gain control over your life and your future. You stop reacting to the moment and start acting with purpose. And that is the essence of self-discipline. The fifth technique to master self-discipline is to create and commit to a structured routine. Routine is the backbone of discipline. It's the system that turns your intentions into actions and your actions into habits. While motivation may spark the initial desire to act, it's routine that ensures you follow through consistently, regardless of how you feel on any given day. Structure doesn't restrict your freedom, it enhances it. When you create a well-thought-out routine, you eliminate the need to make constant decisions about how to spend your time. This reduces mental fatigue and allows you to channel your energy into productive activities. Successful people understand this. They don't leave their days to chance. Instead, they design their routines to align with their goals and priorities. The foundation of a strong routine is clarity. You need to know what you want to achieve and why it matters. This clarity allows you to identify the key actions that will move you closer to your goals. Once you've defined these actions, the next step is to schedule them into your day. When something is on your schedule, it becomes a non-negotiable commitment rather than a vague intention. A structured routine often begins with a purposeful morning. How you start your day sets the tone for everything that follows. Many successful people incorporate activities like exercise, journaling, or reading into their mornings. These practices help them center themselves, focus their minds, and approach the day with intention. The key is not to mimic someone else's routine, but to create one that supports your unique goals and needs. Equally important is how you end your day. Evening routines provide an opportunity to reflect on what you've accomplished, plan for tomorrow, and wind down in a way that promotes restful sleep. This could include reviewing your goals, practicing gratitude, or engaging in a relaxing activity. When you end your day with intention, you set yourself up for success the next morning. Consistency is the secret to making a routine effective. A routine only becomes second nature when you stick to it, day in and day out. At first, this might require conscious effort and discipline. But over time, as the routine becomes ingrained, it requires less willpower to maintain. It shifts from being something you have to think about to something you simply do. One of the challenges of creating a routine is overcoming resistance to change. Humans are creatures of habit, and breaking old patterns can be uncomfortable. The key is to start small. Instead of overhauling your entire day, focus on introducing one new habit at a time. Once that habit becomes part of your routine, you can add another. This gradual approach makes change more manageable and sustainable. Flexibility is another important aspect of routine. Life is unpredictable, and rigid routines can become a source of frustration when unexpected events arise. Successful people design their routines with built-in flexibility, allowing them to adapt without losing sight of their priorities. If a meeting runs late or an emergency arises, they have contingency plans to stay on track. Boundaries play a critical role in maintaining a routine. To protect your time and focus, you need to set clear boundaries around when and how you'll work, rest, and engage with others. This could mean saying no to requests that don't align with your goals, or establishing specific times for personal and professional commitments. Accountability can help you stick to your routine. Share your schedule and goals with a trusted friend, mentor, or coach. Knowing that someone else is aware of your commitments can provide an extra layer of motivation to stay on track. You can even create shared routines with a partner or group where you support each other in maintaining discipline. Tracking your progress is an essential part of maintaining a routine. Use a journal, planner, or habit tracker to record your actions and reflect on your performance. This not only reinforces the habit, but provides valuable insights into what's working and what needs adjustment. Over time, this reflection helps you refine your routine and make it even more effective. A common misconception is that routine stifles creativity or spontaneity. In reality, the opposite is true. A well-structured routine creates a foundation of stability, freeing your mind to think creatively and seize opportunities. When the essential parts of your day are organized, you have more bandwidth to explore new ideas and take advantage of unexpected moments of inspiration. Routine is not about perfection, it's about progress. There will be days when you deviate from your schedule or miss a commitment. The key is not to let one misstep derail your efforts. Successful people treat these moments as temporary setbacks, not reasons to abandon their routine altogether. They recalibrate, recommit, and move forward with renewed focus. Ultimately, a routine is a tool for aligning your daily actions with your long-term vision. It bridges the gap between where you are and where you want to be. By creating and committing to a structured routine, you take control of your time, energy, and focus. You eliminate unnecessary decision-making and distractions, allowing you to channel your resources into meaningful progress. This technique is not about creating a rigid schedule that leaves no room for flexibility or enjoyment. It's about designing a framework that supports your goals while giving you the freedom to live with purpose. When you master this practice, you don't just become more disciplined. You become more empowered to create the life you truly desire. Next, the sixth technique to master self-discipline is to embrace discomfort as a necessary ingredient for growth. Discipline doesn't flourish in a bubble of ease and comfort. It thrives when you willingly face challenges, push your limits, and lean into the uncomfortable moments that lead to progress. Truly successful people understand that the path to mastery is paved with discomfort, and they learn to see it not as an obstacle, but as a powerful catalyst for transformation. Discomfort often gets a bad reputation. It's natural to want to avoid it, to seek out the familiar, the easy, the pleasant. But here's the truth. Comfort zones are where dreams go to stagnate. When you stay within the confines of what's easy and safe, you rob yourself of the opportunity to grow, to improve, and to discover what you're truly capable of. Discomfort, when embraced, is the spark that ignites growth. Growth and discomfort go hand in hand because every step forward requires you to do something new, something unfamiliar, something that might feel difficult or even scary. Progress demands that you step into uncharted territory. The question isn't whether discomfort will appear. It will. The question is how you respond to it. To develop self-discipline, you must reframe your relationship with discomfort. Instead of viewing it as something to avoid, see it as evidence that you're on the right track. Discomfort is a sign that you're stretching yourself, that you're venturing beyond what's comfortable and ordinary. It's a signal that you're growing. One way to build your tolerance for discomfort is to start small. You don't need to dive headfirst into extreme challenges to strengthen your discipline. Begin by introducing manageable discomfort into your daily routine. These small acts of discipline build your resilience and teach you that discomfort is not something to fear. Successful people actively seek out situations that challenge them. They don't wait for life to force them out of their comfort zones. They do it willingly. They understand that the more they expose themselves to discomfort, the more comfortable they become with uncertainty, struggle, and growth. Over time, what once felt difficult or intimidating becomes second nature, and their capacity for discipline expands. Discomfort often brings with it the voice of doubt, the inner critic that whispers, "You can't do this," or "This is too hard." Learning to quiet that voice is an essential part of mastering self-discipline. Successful people train themselves to focus on their goals and their why rather than their immediate feelings. They remind themselves of the bigger picture and the rewards that lie on the other side of the challenge. Visualization can be a powerful tool for overcoming discomfort. When you encounter a difficult moment, take a few seconds to picture yourself succeeding, finishing the workout, delivering the speech, completing the project. Imagine how you'll feel when you've pushed through the discomfort and achieved your goal. This mental rehearsal can provide the motivation you need to stay the course. Accountability plays a role in embracing discomfort. Share your goals and challenges with someone you trust, a mentor, a friend, or a coach, who can provide encouragement and perspective. When you know that someone else is aware of your efforts, it becomes easier to stay committed even when things get tough. They can remind you of your why when your resolve wavers. Another key to navigating discomfort is to focus on progress, not perfection. When you challenge yourself, you won't always get it right the first time. There will be setbacks, missteps, and moments when you fall short of your expectations. But these moments are not failures. They're opportunities to learn and grow. Celebrate the fact that you showed up and tried, and use each experience to refine your approach. Discomfort teaches patience. In a world that values instant results, it's easy to get discouraged when progress feels slow. But self-discipline is not about quick wins. It's about sustained effort over time. Discomfort reminds you that growth is a process, not an event. It requires consistency, resilience, and a willingness to keep going, even when the payoff isn't immediately visible. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to embrace discomfort as a teacher. Every challenge you face has something to teach you about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your potential. When you approach discomfort with curiosity rather than resistance, you open yourself to insights and growth that would otherwise remain hidden. You begin to see discomfort not as an enemy, but as an ally on your journey to success. It's important to recognize that discomfort is temporary. The pain of effort, the struggle of learning, the uncertainty of trying something new, these feelings pass. What remains is the growth, the knowledge, the strength, and the confidence that come from persevering. Successful people understand this, and they use it to motivate themselves to keep pushing forward. Over time, as you repeatedly face and overcome discomfort, you build a sense of self-trust. You prove to yourself that you can handle challenges, that you can endure and overcome, and that you're capable of more than you once believed. This confidence becomes a powerful driver of discipline, propelling you to tackle even greater challenges. Embracing discomfort doesn't mean seeking pain for its own sake. It means recognizing that every worthwhile goal comes with a price of effort and persistence. It means being willing to pay that price because you know the rewards far outweigh the temporary discomfort. When you adopt this mindset, you unlock a level of discipline and determination that sets you apart. Discomfort is not a barrier. It's a bridge. It's the space between where you are and where you want to be. By embracing it, you turn challenges into opportunities, doubts into determination, and struggles into success. This is how you cultivate the discipline to achieve your goals and create a life of growth, purpose, and fulfillment. Remember, self-discipline is not a single trait or a fleeting act of willpower. It's a way of life. It's the sum of your habits, your mindset, and your willingness to consistently choose the hard but right path over the easy but meaningless one. It's the foundation upon which all success is built, the steady hand that guides you through the chaos of life toward your goals. When you commit to mastering self-discipline, you're not just committing to a set of rules or restrictions, you're committing to your future self. You're choosing to prioritize long-term fulfillment over short-term gratification. You're choosing growth, excellence, and integrity over mediocrity, complacency, and excuses. What's most inspiring about self-discipline is that it's not reserved for the naturally gifted, the privileged, or the lucky. It's accessible to anyone who is willing to do the work. It doesn't matter where you're starting from or what challenges you face. What matters is your commitment to taking one step at a time, consistently moving closer to the person you want to become. The techniques are not theoretical. They're practical, proven strategies that you can start applying today. From clarifying your why to mastering your habits, from building a fortress around your focus to embracing discomfort as a teacher, each technique is a piece of the puzzle. Together, they create a framework that empowers you to take control of your life and shape your destiny. Self-discipline is a journey, not a destination. There will be days when you falter, when the pull of comfort feels overwhelming, or when progress seems slow. But those moments are not failures. They're opportunities to recommit, to learn, and to grow stronger. Each time you choose discipline over distraction, you're reinforcing your commitment to yourself and your goals. The beauty of self-discipline is that it compounds. The small disciplined choices you make today build momentum, confidence, and resilience over time. What feels difficult now will become second nature, and the progress you achieve will inspire you to aim even higher. It's a virtuous cycle that transforms not only your actions, but your identity. At its core, self-discipline is about self-respect. It's about recognizing your worth and refusing to settle for less than your best. It's about treating your time, your energy, and your potential as the precious resources they are. When you approach life with this mindset, you unlock a sense of purpose and empowerment that fuels every aspect of your journey. Success is not a matter of chance, it's a matter of discipline. It's the result of consistently doing the things that others avoid, of showing up day after day with focus, determination, and a commitment to excellence. And the best part? Every step you take toward mastering self-discipline is a step toward the life you've always envisioned. When you look back on your journey, it won't be the moments of ease or comfort that stand out. It will be the times when you chose to push through the struggle, to rise above the distractions, and to stay true to your purpose. Those are the moments that define you, that shape your character, and that lead to lasting success. The question now is not whether you have the ability to master self-discipline. You do. The question is whether you're willing to take the first step. Whether you're willing to show up, commit, and keep going, even when it's hard. Because the rewards of self-discipline are worth every ounce of effort you put in. They're worth the struggle, the sacrifice, and the discomfort. They're worth it because they lead to a life of purpose, progress, and fulfillment. A life that you create through your own determination and discipline.